We're going to be watching Destiny on the Pangburn events. This is an anti-Trump tour sponsored by a Canadian gentleman. And effectively, it's an opportunity for Destiny to debate normies. That oftentimes is some of his best content, so I'm excited to take a look at it. Without further ado, let's bring Mr. Stephen Bennell II on screen. Let's enable our audio, and let's see what Mr. Destiny has for us today.
So I just want to get right into the debates here. So I want to bring up first someone who said their reason for voting for Trump was that Trump was one of the few people that has genuinely been able to change and make an impact in the American government. For example, the vaccines for COVID. He knows how to respect his base. Please welcome to the stage, Tristan Zapp. Tristan, you're up. Okay, buddy.
That energy was clearly indicating a clap for your opponents, you autists. But whatever. Good morning, Razzle.
Hey, what's up?
Make sure you talk nice and close to the mic.
Yeah, it's all properly. We good? Okay, I guess I kind of talk a little bit on the louder side.
Yeah, no, you could be as loud as better.
All right, awesome. So, hello, I'm not sure if you prefer to be called Destiny or Steven.
Steven's fine here, yeah.
Okay, Steven, okay. So general gist is I felt like across the board when it came to Donald Trump's election as a whole, a lot of the stuff when it came to his policies and respecting his base, I thought were perfectly in line with what I wanted. And the main thing I kind of wanted to fixate on, which I think you'd appreciate, is one, the vaccine response, right? Where a lot of people look at that as an overreach of government and an overreach of the fact that the FDA just sped run through the testing. I honestly thought it was a really good result, and to show the fact that I think that there can be a benefit to going about things in a very undemocratic way. Right? Because we look at the amount of lives that the vaccine saved, and someone that we see as an inherently like authoritarian figure, honestly wound up saving a lot of lives. And I feel like he doesn't get enough credit for that. And honestly, it's one of the reasons why I wound up re-electing him and re-voting for him, because he strikes me as someone that is capable of not being afraid to bend the rules of government in order to pass through policies that actually can and do help people. So
that's crazy, but okay. Let's see what Steven's response is, but all right. Fuck. Okay. This is really early for a lot of psychic damage.
I think that in that argument, there is a very buried nugget of truth where, people were critical. Abe Lincoln, suspending habeas corpus for a little bit during the Civil War and everything. And you've got Trump, who I don't know if I would say Operation Warp Speed is an undemocratic way necessarily to approach trying to speed to the vaccine thing. The only reason I say it is because democracy can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't mean that the executive is acting, therefore it's not democratic, right? I don't know if he necessarily broke any laws or any rules. But I would say that the biggest issue when it comes to looking at Donald Trump breaking rules is his lack of a coherent plan or his lack of vision for what he's trying to do. Sometimes ends up, shooting himself in the foot as opposed to actually being able to take advantage of the thing that he's done. So for instance, I kind of say that as a backhanded compliment when people say, well, what was good about Trump? And I'll say, oh, well, Operation Warp Speed. And the reason why it's a backhanded compliment is because Trump doesn't take credit for Operation Warp Speed anymore because he poisoned his entire audience against the vaccine such that when you say it saved lives, it did. It saved Democratic lives because in general, Democrats are more likely to get vaccinated than Republicans were.
Yeah. So you made a lot of solid points there, and in a roundabout way, I think some of the things you bring up with the fact that he often shoots himself in the foot is a very Trump thing to do. And I've watched it time and time again throughout his administration. And it's an unfortunate thing, but plenty of presidential administrations have shot themselves in the foot time and time again. And they've walked back on promises that they've made. The Obama administration famously never pulled out troops from Afghanistan, right? It took Donald Trump to that. And you can go bit by bit. I'm not trying.
Oh, okay. So this is what's frustrating to me about this guy. I have people like this in my family who always try to steelman Donald Trump through like the efficacious execution of policy. And I got to say, it's annoying as hell. Now, is there a kernel of truth to it? Maybe, but at the same time, you look at the damage that's been done. Let's break it down real quick. So Operation Warp Speed was Donald Trump saying, like, we're going to rush a vaccine for COVID because, you know, it's important for us to be able to get back to work, this, that, the other. And if that had been consistently in line with messaging that's effectively saying, like, listen, COVID's a big deal because it's very infectious. If you're young, you'll probably be okay. But if you're old, it could really mess you up. And even if you're young, there's still a small chance it'll mess you up. Like, we don't want you guys catching this stuff, so you need to lock down as aggressively as possible. I lived in Florida, so we had a very libertarian perspective on it, which was, if you want to lock down, lock down. If you don't want to lock down, don't lock down. And so as a result, all the people who wanted to go outside, they went outside, they got sick, and they either died or they didn't die. And so a lot of old people died, but a lot of young people didn't. And so as a result, Florida got back on its feet pretty quickly. And for people like my wife and I, we would go out in public, but we would go masked. And we would only go out on rare occasion, like if there was like a family gathering, or if there was a funeral, or if there was a wedding, or if there was something like that. We would go to like the big important events, but we just kind of locked down for like small stupid shit. Like if somebody just wanted to get like wasted on a Saturday randomly, we wouldn't go do that. The whole point of why I'm bringing that up, though, is because all our Republican friends, all our MAGA friends, they didn't lock down at all. They didn't give a shit because there was contradictory messaging about it. And as a result, more Republicans got killed. So even his best example of what Trump did that's positive isn't something that the MAGA base recognizes as positive. All right. One important comment before we get back into the content. Jakara says, I've explored Fantasy Warhammer through an MMO and Total War. What's a good entry for 40K? So for MMO, I've heard Rogue Trader is pretty good. I love Space Marine 2, and if you have a good system, I do love Dark Tide. And then for books, I love anything by the author Dan Abnett.
Like both sides of it, but I feel like there's this like hyper criticism. Of course, he's the president, but there's this like hyper criticism on like, oh, Trump messed up, Trump shot himself in the foot. Well, at the same time, and I do strongly believe this, I think he's one of the most democratic presidents we've had, solely off of the fact that when he got elected, most of the positions and stuff that he backed his base on, he tried to do, right?
Sure,
So,
but I think one issue
We still don't have a wall, and it was not paid for by Mexico.
I have is when people talk about failures of Trump, we switch to a passive voice, or we speak of things as though they never could have been otherwise. Like you just said, some things have happened under Trump that were unfortunate, or the fact that his audience was poisoned against vaccines was unfortunate. It wasn't unfortunate. That was Trump's fault. Like it wasn't that these things just happened to happen under Trump. It was his poor leadership that directly caused these things to happen. And a lot of the talk around COVID and around vaccines, that was just his fault. That was bad leadership.
I'm not sure if I would agree with that, mainly because the fact that, if I remember correctly, the first thing that came out when there was talk about speed running the FDA's administration processes and everything was the fact that Donald Trump's administration and the Democrats in response were saying that, well, we shouldn't take a Trump vaccine, right? I'm trying to remember the specific.
Which was normally assholes on social media. And by the way, I did see that. This is part of the confusion with like tribal identitarian politics, where anything your opponent does is bad and you can't acknowledge any of the good. That was part of the problem. Was they were like, oh, I would never take a Trump vaccine because he sped it through and it's going to kill us all. That was when Trump endorsed the vaccine. That was a common talking point on social media. I'm not going to memory hole that.
Elected representatives, and
well,
yes,
so I think the specific statements where you could argue that they weren't the most responsible statements, something like, I wouldn't trust what Trump says, I would have to see what the FDA says or something, right? Which were statements that were said, but Democrats ended up taking it and Republicans didn't.
But this is the thing, right? So if the Democratic administration can make claims or statements on certain positions on the vaccine, and then when they actually wind up, then the public hears it, and the Democratic administration's public doesn't actually follow through on what their representatives say, then I don't know how much you can actually fault Trump for his own supporters letting themselves die and not taking the vaccine.
Well, I think the issue is that it's a false equivalence to say that Democrats signaled against the vaccine as hard as Trump and the Republicans signaled against everything COVID related. Like there were a couple of
true
statements that Democrat lawmakers probably shouldn't have made with regards to the vaccine.
But that
But they were bordering on irresponsible, maybe. But like Trump, when COVID,
You don't have to be tribal about it. You can say some Democrats had stupid messaging around the COVID vaccination. It was a confusing time. Like, I don't know, maybe some of you guys were like teenagers during that. So maybe you kind of memory hold the entire event and don't really understand what was going on. Was in March of 2020, which was 5 years ago, which feels like yesterday, but realistically, that is a long time. We just found out that there was this new disease coming out that was supposedly going to jack up the world economy. And so everybody kind of panicked. And I remember thinking in March of 2020, I was like, man, if I could just snort a line of the disease now and then either live or die, but have like a better immune system at the end of it, I would just do that right now. Like, if I could have exposed myself in March just to eliminate the uncertainty, I would have exposed myself to the disease because I did not want to go through months and months and months and months of social isolation and waiting for a vaccination. Now, of course, that wasn't an option. And so basically the entire world came to a standstill and locked down waiting for the vaccinations to come out. And the people who went out into the world, a lot of them were fine, but a lot of them got hurt and or killed. Like, there was 1.1 million people. I want you to think about that. 1.1 million people died as a result of this disease. Most of them were over the age of 50, but some of them weren't. As an example, I have a cousin by marriage who was in his late 20s. He was overweight, but besides that, he did not have any other symptoms. And he was on a ventilator for like 120 days. And he had to fight for his life tooth and nail. That dude almost didn't make it. And then the crazy thing about it is, the crazy thing about it is his family didn't get vaccinated because they didn't believe in the vaccines, even after they saw their own husband and father almost die. Absolutely bananas time to be alive. Totally insane. Razzle says, the Nathan stuff is a major bummer. I'm amazed that his parents haven't taken away his phone and internet. Hopefully he grows out of it. I mean, we all have an edgy phase, and I think that's fine. If Nathan is having an edgy phase, it is what it is. But sometimes people get stuck in their edgy phases and they never grow up, and that would be my concern. Penguin says, not so erudite is out to save young men. Maybe she'll turn him around. Yeah, but you kind of want to balance like parasocial attachment versus trying to help people versus all that kind of stuff, right? Eric Dom says the chat thing will be solved over time with the culture you are building. Old chatters will get new chatters up to date. And for everything else, we have mods. You are building a healthy culture. Good. Thank you, Eric Dom. I appreciate that. Sin Patty says the verbal abuse is what makes Connor true. Team People for $20. Thank you, King. Your commitment and moral integrity are appreciated. You stand by what you say, but you are not afraid to admit when you may be wrong. A rare trait nowadays. Glazing over. Thank you for the donation, King. Very much appreciated. Yeah. So... Leon Cruz says, Nick literally said in a stream he was going to make Destiny's Son a groiper. Ooh, yeah, that hurts my feelings. DD22E says, question for later, but do you think Destiny could fix his optics problems? Also, when do you think Twitch will unban him? Because I think it's just a matter of when and not if. I don't know if they'll ever unban him with the current administration because I think they're such Hassan glazing simps that they would rather lose the millions of dollars in revenue they would generate from Steven compared to creating a new adpocalypse with Hassan and Destiny fighting on the platform. Also, like, I could technically, I'm cross-platform live right now. I could get suspended right now for watching Destiny. So it's kind of, I don't know. I don't know, and I don't care. How about that? But the point is, with the optics problem, I think that what's going to happen is similar to every other creator. People are going to have a quick throwaway sentence. They're going to say, oh, Steven, isn't that the consent violator? Or isn't that the e-rapist? You know, that's what J-Stock says or whatever. And then the fans are just going to have to come up with something like something simple. Let's say that he settles in court because it takes too long and Pixie actually has a case. Yeah, like he screwed up. It's definitely messed up, but, you know, he settled it. He fixed it, whatever. And he doesn't do that kind of crap anymore. Now, if that's true and Steven stops doing that crap, awesome. If Steven does keep doing that crap and he ends up being a serial killer, then that's going to be a problem. So, right. All right. A couple more before we get back into it. The King Slime says, I hold my shirts because I'm too cool to wear them. Based. Peter Mars says, lots of eccentric types in this video. Based. I am 30 says, it worked, question mark. I don't know what you're in reference to. Last one. Kale McCulloch says, I'm still in the Ninth Circuit about to ban vax mandates and state use of preponderance to take our rights, waiting on a court date. Okay, cool. Freedom is very important. I don't know how to balance it against security, but, you know, as Ben Franklin would say, those who would give away essential liberty for temporary security deserve and shall receive neither.
COVID first came here, right? People don't like Fauci because they said one of many things. Now they say he lied about masks early on. Donald Trump lied about how much COVID was here for like over a week. He said there's just probably one case, there's maybe 10 cases, there's maybe 100 cases, when there were tens of thousands of infected people in New York City. Like,
well, I mean, I feel like there's been an issue here because you're kind of conflating the response that Trump had with the like distribution of the vaccine and everything, and what his fellow Republicans said about the vaccine, versus the fact that like there's only so much you can do when your own base kind of runs with different things. Trump was never in opposition to the vaccine. He made it. He even, you know, proudly proclaimed at many different, you know, events he went to that he proudly got the jab and stuff. So while Trump isn't like inherently against the vaccine, you know, he did critique elements of the administration and the CDC, like Fauci, like other representatives. So while there is like gridlock there, I don't think just because there's gridlock that all of a sudden magically your base just kind of caters or something. You know, I mean, I don't think like it's
you don't think
right.
Donald Trump constantly undermining and attacking the government is what led to Republicans not trusting the government?
No, I actually don't think that's the case because
yes,
while Donald Trump has attacked the government, he's attacked the like specific sectors. Like you can obviously,
it's like every sector that doesn't agree with him, basically, right? Like
well,
he attacked the Federal Reserve when they wouldn't lower interest rates for him. He attacked Fauci and everything. And
but plenty of presidents complain about the administration not working the way they want to. That's the whole point. We've had this as a thing all the way back from like Theodore Roosevelt, right, with the bully pulpit. This is something that presidential
I don't think
the
bully pulpit is supposed to be, I believe, to other lawmakers in contested districts, not to your own cabinet. Right? You can always fire and rehire.
It definitely has been to your own cabinet, though. You can definitely use it. It's a tool that the president has as being the voice of the people that elected him to apply pressure to the constituents around him and the people and the lawmakers. So I feel like trying to like hinge a point on like, well, like, you know, the whole Republican Party went like tits up about the vaccine. Like, yeah, that did happen. And I'm not in agreement with it, to be honest with you. I got both jabs and, you know, I'm like fully vaccinated. My friends look at me like I'm crazy. They think I'm going to be sterilized or something. But despite that, like I still went through the process of getting the vaccine. Like I feel like there's this weird conflation here where it's like, Donald Trump never took out any outright statements against the vaccine, and then you saying that because of the fact that he critiqued the government, that all of a sudden that all Republicans threw out the baby with the bathwater. I just don't think that's like fundamentally true.
He didn't just critique the government. He's made several claims that huge swaths of the government were working in a malicious manner to undermine him and his administration for the entirety of his government and the next government, and sometimes I guess in his current government.
I feel like Stephen does lose a little bit of truth points here for me, because as an example, I brought this up in our original debate where, you know, by the way, he thought I was like pro-Trump somehow, which I think, you know, we just weren't close enough of friends for him to realize that I wasn't, but that's okay. The military admitted to undermining the Trump admin. So did General Mattis, and I respect the shit out of Mattis. I understand that the military vet bro community was like, oh yeah, Mad Dog Mattis, he's such a hero. And then the second that he was like, hey, this Trump guy's a fucking idiot, they were like, oh, Mad Dog Mattis, he's so cringe. He exaggerated all his achievements. It's like, wow, okay, you guys are absolutely fair weather fans. Fuck you. Sorry for being vulgar, but it's true. And so Mad Dog Mattis was like, this is the most incompetent guy I've ever worked with. But what Mattis admitted to effectively, and what the military admitted to, and what some of my military friends told me, is that Trump was trying to yank military forces out of Syria, out of Afghanistan, out of Iraq, and there were ongoing operations that were taking out like key terrorist players in the region. And then not just that, we needed a drawdown. We needed to be able to like, when you just yank forces out of a region, there's a vacuum, and within that power vacuum, you know, some forces are going to fill it, and the faster and more abrupt that change of power is, the more likely there are to be like mass slaughter, rapes, executions, all that kind of stuff. And so Madison, the military establishment, was like, yeah, we can withdraw, but we're not going to do it overnight because we're basically going to allow our allies and a bunch of civilians to get raped and murdered if we do it this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to juke the numbers in Iraq and Syria using TAD, temporarily assigned duty, in order to make sure that we actually have the troops that we need. That is the deep state undermining Trump. However, I think that a incompetent president ordering something stupid and then our military admin undermining that effort in order to make sure that people don't get raped and murdered, I actually think that's a good thing. Weird, I know. Preventing rape and murder and wholesale military slaughter, good.
Depending on who he's talking about.
When the economy's struggling, right? And of course, I'm not saying I'm pro or against the lockdowns that happen, but when the economy is like struggling and you see a political moment to hinder your economy even more and make the current administration look even bad by further locking down, right? By further enforcing job mandates, by further enforcing like, oh, it does kind of strike me in some way that, while yes, you can say that the Democrats are trying to adjust and fix, and do a proper response to Trump's administration, at the end of the day, they still hurt the economy very heavily, and they hurt a lot of people by doing those lockdowns. And
when we say, didn't COVID hurt the economy? I mean, if the lockdowns and everything are a response to a worldwide pandemic, I mean, is it?
But the question is, if the lockdowns were necessary as hardcore as they were, did people under the age of 50 need to be mandated not to go to work, particularly if they wanted to go to work? Florida, the state that I currently reside in, experienced a population boom during and immediately after COVID because Rust Belt Democrats, who were so locked down during COVID, were already in economically depressed cities that got further locked down to the point that they weren't able to pay their bills and the stimulus wasn't enough. And so as a result, they sold all of their earthly belongings and moved to Central Florida and Florida. So like the Democrats are the classic of good intentions leading to bad policy that then has secondary and third order consequences that hurt people, that are predictable, and then those people rebelling against Democrats.
Fair to blame the people who locked down on that?
I mean, there are plenty of countries that decided not to. Like I was saying, the lockdown question.
Yeah, like Sweden and shit. Like, weren't there some countries that didn't lock down on like younger age groups?
As a whole, is a very difficult thing. I think most people would agree with that here.
Sure. Also, I would say most countries did do versions of lockdowns, right?
Yeah, to some degree in differing levels.
And they also had more damaged economies than the United States economy that did partial lockdowns.
Disagree with that, but what I'm saying is
because your last statement made it sound like Democrats did lockdowns intentionally just to hurt the economy with the hopes that it would damage Trump.
Yeah, and it did feel like that to some extent. I feel like
I guess the issue I have is that when there's evidence of Trump lying or scheming or doing things, it seems like we always say well, we can't read Trump's mind, but there's no evidence ever. Oh. There's no evidence of Democrats intentionally shutting down states in order to intentionally damage their economy, which also doesn't make sense because places like New Zealand and Australia hardcore shut down their stuff. Were they just trying to destroy their whole economies intentionally, or did Democrats just happen to do the exact same actions in their states that other countries were doing?
I feel like
but their care of harm might not have been proportional to the threat. That's the whole point from libertarians and conservatives, is that if you actually look at the stats for injury and death for under 50, it's still quite rare. I agree, the vaccine is better than getting exposed to the disease, and there's still a real chance of getting injured or killed as a result of the disease. But if you look at under 50, the stats are still pretty rare, and over 50 is really the vulnerable population. So lockdown for over 50 and letting under 50 people either work or not work on a voluntary basis, I think that would have worked out better than what we did.
You highlight a really important point about intentionality, and I think it's a little weird that you went about it with the notion that a lot of people assume you can't read Trump's mind, but you're assuming that I can't try to participate in the understanding of what Democratic lawmakers are thinking at the time. And from a simple political perspective, it's beneficial for your side to exploit a catastrophe that's happening under the administration you don't like, right? Well, I'm not saying that Democrats crippled and horrifyingly destroyed the economy. At the end of the day, you can't acknowledge that lockdowns had a negative impact on the economy, and they did cater to what Democrats wanted, which is a negative demonstration of Trump's effect on the American economy, right?
No.
Yes. Sorry, Stephen. Yes, but feel free to expand.
Why not?
Well, like they could have just locked down because they thought that was the best path forward because they kept their people safer, and that's what people around the world were doing, right?
Right, which I agree with. But what I'm saying is like
Listen, I'm not going to memory hold this, and I'm not going to sweep for Stephen, okay? Democrats can simultaneously think that locking down was the right thing to do, and they can also use the economic implosion and the mismanagement of COVID as rhetoric for why the Trump admin was incompetent. They can also genuinely believe that. That's not just politics. They might want to demonstrate that the Trump admin was incompetent, but they could also earnestly believe that the Trump admin is incompetent. These things aren't contradictory.
Stripping my right to be able to interpret the minds of Democrats when I never said I was stripping the right of being able to interpret like the minds of Donald Trump. For example, he just bombed Iran the other day, right?
Well, but I don't have to guess Donald Trump's mind state. Thank God. I can just look at his social media and I know what he's thinking at literally
Nebraska Steve.
All points in time. I guess my issue is that
true.
Like if I were to say Donald Trump is doing the tariffs just to destroy the world economy, would you say that's a fair read?
Based.
I mean, to some degree, yeah, that is because of the fact that
shouldn't we rely on reporting on what people are saying around the person, what the person themselves is saying? Like, there's no evidence that Democrats, like for instance, other countries that shut down, were they shutting down just because they wanted to destroy their own economies?
No. But
so
I'm
if
saying
Democrats were shutting down states and other countries were shutting down, wouldn't it be more reasonable to assume that they were probably doing it out of fear of the pandemic rather than trying to intentionally tank the economy under Trump?
So what I feel like, okay, what I'm trying to get across here is I'm not trying to intentionally say that this was their main goal. They're like, hell yeah, lockdowns are.
But this was absolutely a rhetorical goal of the time. I know you guys probably hate this guy and you probably disagree with what I'm saying, but listen, the truth is the truth, okay?
Going to screw up the entire American economy. This is awesome. What I'm saying though is that this is that it just kind of happened to line up with the fact that they wanted to make the administration look bad. And I feel like lockdowns did help do that because when Trump's main position and the main thing he's campaigning on is how strong and how well the economy is, and then Democrats lock down the economy, it's going to make him look worse. And I feel like you can't ignore that. Listen, sometimes politics can line up with intentions, right? So just because a negative thing is happening.
That's a way different statement to say that it happened to be politically advantageous versus they wanted that to be the case, right?
Okay, so I guess I misused my words a little bit here. So wanted, right? So I did.
Actually, I like the way this guy is doing argumentation. I understand that you guys might not agree with me. However, if he's saying oh, I misspoke earlier, if that's what you understood from what I'm saying, I actually feel that's an agreeable way to, get people to move towards the point that you're actually trying to make, even if you didn't make a misstatement earlier. I think that's a good way to do it. And so effectively, if he's saying listen, I'm not trying to say Democrats intentionally tank the economy in order to make Trump look bad, but while the economy needed to be locked down, in order to signal their opposition to the Trump admin, they might have locked down harder than they needed to, and they might have virtue signaled about how they were right and Trump was wrong in order to make the Trump admin look incompetent. I remember that. That happened. So Stephen, in my opinion, if he denies that, he's denying reality, and I don't feel like it's that controversial of an idea. Now, I'm going to check in with chat because I parasocially love my chat. Thank you to 150, 170 people who are in chat right now. Please remember to like the stream. Please remember to engage in chat. There's lots of really funny, interesting people in there. Please remember to watch the VODs. That way I get that sweet, sweet AdSense revenue and super chats and memberships if you got them. If you don't worry about it. True Zealot says, oh, hi, Connor. If I'm an outspoken female Custodes critic, but have also bought a painted sororitas army, am I still misogynistic chud, or can I use it to bludgeon my wargaming ideological opponents? I think owning a sororitas army allows you to be sexist for the rest of your life. Jonah Boy says, the most I've worked is the occasional double, which is 16 hours. Yeah, I've worked 20-hour shifts as a cop, but that was 5 years ago. Leanne Cruz says, how are you as a man forced to take the vaccine? Pathetic. Leanne Cruz, I like that. because there's a lot of people who are like, oh, in order to work my job, I had to take the vaccine. And no, I didn't get injured, but I had to. And it's like, listen, man, like we all work in a capitalist economy, okay? We all have the capacity to find new jobs. If that was that big of a deal to you, you should have found a new job. Oh, okay, cool. So it wasn't us. Okay, all right. Our water started tasting funky recently, and it turns out the water treatment facility got struck by lightning. The water is still safe, but there's extra minerals in there. So that's why our water was a little spicy over the past week. Gen X says, I changed my mind. They should study a cure/deprogramming for it. What, for cults? Maybe. Cole McCulloch says, Al Sultan Al Fahim, next time the state tries to force you to take a vaccine, you need to demand to see the law they're using to force you and threaten to sue them and follow through. Yeah, Cale McCulloch, I actually, I lucked out. Now, I ended up, studying it enough and all that kind of stuff to the fact that I believed and still believe that the vaccines, while there is potential for injury, it is substantively less than getting exposed to the base level disease. And so as a result, I did the first two and I didn't experience any side effects. I think for the second shot, I felt like shit for a couple of days and then everything was fine. And that was my total amount of symptoms. So, I and my family and my wife were fine. So, I get it. If you don't want to be compelled, then don't get compelled. But, at the end of the day, COVID was serious. It killed 1.1 million people in the United States alone. Larry Hutchinson gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, King. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Larry. That's like your third donation in 48 hours, honestly. Thank you, man. Very much appreciated. Philip says, Connor, the Afghanistan pullout is so annoying. It's used as both a good point for Trump and a negative point for Biden, sometimes in the same sentence. Philip Coffey, I'm happy you caught that. I'm going to read a couple more and then I'll get back into the content. But this guy, weirdly enough, is steel manning all of the things that a lot of MAGA would think are bad. So, for instance, Trump is the guy who negotiated a 2-year pullout of Afghanistan without the Afghan national government, and he exclusively negotiated with the Taliban, effectively saying, stop shooting us for the next year and a half, and then we'll withdraw from the country. Then he set it up for exactly after the election. So if he won, then he could play with the timetable as he saw fit, but realistically, he could just withdraw immediately after the election when he was least politically vulnerable. But if Biden won, then he could throw it onto Biden. And then Biden pushed it all the way back to August, which was like another 6 months, and it was still a disaster. So I think they both own the Afghanistan withdrawal. Is this Hutch? No, it's not Hutch. Thank you. All right. Back to no. It's not Hutch the it's not Hutch the streamer. It's a different guy, as far as I know. All right. Let's continue.
When I said wanted, I mean that they were encouraged to do the lockdowns because of the fact that would be politically disadvantageous to the current administration.
I still feel like, while it might be a benefit, when I lived in Nebraska, we had snow days sometimes. Nobody would have accused
we had snow
me of
days here too,
causing the snow to fall because I wanted a snow day, and it would actually benefit me a lot, right? Like, if there's a whole reason, there's a whole set of explanations for why it's snowing, I would probably go with all of those. And I see it snows in other states where there aren't even kids that go to school, right? So it probably snows because of the weather. If I look at why economies are being locked down, like Canada locked down a ton, they had protests over it.
I'm going to lift some weights while we're doing this.
New Zealand, Australia were huge lockdown economies. All of Europe did lockdowns. Even all of the Republican states, to some extent, everybody did like some kind of lockdown. Like, it feels like if we think the Democrats are snowflakes and babies about diseases and stuff more than Republicans, which I think most Republicans would say that anyway, it seems like it would logically follow that they would also lock down the economy a bit more, not just to hurt Trump, but because they feel like that was the right thing to do. And then again, on the flip side, like, to draw another example. So, for instance, like when we had an immigration bill that could have passed in the last year of Biden's term, Donald Trump explicitly came out and he explicitly said, I don't want that bill to pass because I need to keep the border open because this is an election issue for me.
Yeah,
but like, people will say like, well, that doesn't count, but like that is a clear line of thought.
So I want to. Okay, cool. That's right. I wouldn't say. I've heard you bring up this point many times about
Sure.
the immigration bill, but I feel like something that you fail to kind of talk about with it is the fact that when it comes to like an immigration bill like that, you're giving a one up to the other side, right? So if there's issues of immigration, right, and we pass a bill that only is like a half measure, right? While it would have addressed some of the issues of immigration, it wouldn't have addressed Trump's main voter base with immigration. You can't really cater to that because let's say Biden and the bipartisan Republicans agreed to pass the immigration reform bill. Well, what winds up happening then is Biden runs on that bill. He says, look, we fixed immigration, right? And you're basically catering to the other side. But like you have to acknowledge that that's like a huge political tool.
But like,
You know
isn't
what I
that kind
mean?
of the goal of governing? Don't we want to like do things that are good for the country and make people happy and healthy? And
Yeah,
This appeal to political pragmatism, I feel like Steven's being a little bit, unpragmatic or not real politique when it comes to it. If they had successfully passed the immigration bill, which I, basically read an overview of and thought was actually quite positive. If they passed that, they would have handed Biden the capacity to say during the election, they would have handed him the capacity to say, well, we fixed it. We had bipartisan legislation the likes we haven't seen in the past decade. We passed it. We got judges to do this. We got more judges. We got more CBP. We got the capacity to do expedited removal better. All this stuff, and so as a result, we fixed immigration. Meanwhile, it still would have been a half measure. Now, that half measure would have been better for the United States of America, in my opinion, compared to what we're doing right now. But that's not what Trump and MAGA wanted. Trump and MAGA wanted what we have right now, which is ICE agents running down Mexican immigrants on construction sites and Home Depot parking lots in order to throw them into vans and deport them with minimal process back into Central America. That's what the Trump base wanted, along with a bill that's going to spend I think the most we've ever spent on border security. And on top of that, we were arguing about a $21 billion wall in the first Trump admin, and I'm pretty sure the Democrats were like, oh yeah, this is a waste of time. This is a waste of money. Then we saw a massive spike in immigration during the Biden admin. And now I think we're spending $40 billion on the wall. So, dude, it sucks. Like, I'm not going to lie. The past decade of politics sucks. Reading some more chats, though, because again, I parasocially love you guys. Cale McCulloch says, locking down killed people, not Republicans engaging in natural immunity. Deaths from COVID were so rare and almost always from a lack of exercise, and those people locked down. Cale McCulloch, I'm not trying to be mean. You and I disagree, okay? In 2020 and 2021, there was 1.1 million excess deaths. That means that it wasn't flu, it wasn't gunshots, it wasn't any of that bullshit. There was 1 million extra people who died, disproportionate amounts of which were COVID related. Okay? It was COVID related. And for you to say, oh, well, they were fat or they were old or they had diabetes. It's like, okay, do we not care about fat people? Do we not care about old people? Do we not care about people with diabetes? Are they worth less than healthy people? Like okay, you can say yes, like I don't care. But at the same time, that's your line of argumentation. Is if you're obese and you die, tough shit. The King Slime says, had a headache, then he said Trump was the most democratic. Now I have a migraine and I feel sick. Welcome to the grind, brother. I wake up every day and I take psychic damage on your behalf, so it's mildly entertaining. That's my job. Excuse me. Based rogue trader enjoyer, true. You meant RPG, I assume? Yes, role-playing game. Cale McCulloch says, when we grew up, it was still common knowledge that when there was an outbreak, you lock all the kids in a room so they all get sick at once. Our immune systems work very well. Okay, Cole, you're still not explaining away the 1 million excess deaths, and I don't think you're going to be able to by the time I get to your next comment. KO Dave says, hi, Connor. How's it going? Pretty good. Kale says, COVID was deadly for one reason only. It was highly contagious. It was less deadly than the flu. Not many people are rushing out to get a flu vaccine. Okay, there's still 1 million people dead, buddy. Nothing you're going to say is going to contradict that. Gen X says, oh, but there's 50 billion in the Build Back Better to finish the wall, Connor. Yeah, I mean, I literally just said that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Leanne Cruz says, used to be a Destiny fan, still kind of am, but he's an R slur. Destiny at his best is when he's in opposition to someone like Fuentes. Yeah. Even in this debate, I think that this guy, just to summarize it in case you feel like I'm being too charitable to this guy, I feel like this guy is steel manning the Trump admin way too hard, and he's steel manning everything Trump does, and he's kind of being contrarian. I feel like Steven's doing like a good job of fighting him, which is like the whole point of these debates. But I think by not conceding to some level of the descriptive truth or reality of what this guy is saying, this might work for like a liberal or progressive audience, but for like a conservatarian or conservative or libertarian audience, they're gonna notice when Steven isn't conceding to descriptive reality. Sun Patty says, to be honest, if I let my beard grow wild, I would probably look like a typical Trump voter. Based, do it, confuse the world. Brandon Cook says, why is everything always the Democrats' fault? Why can't conservatives take responsibility for a single thing? Because they play politics hard. Cole, is it Kale? God, I'm getting old. The mRNA vaccine was not safe and effective. It was experimental and turned out to cause heart clots and was not effective for healthy people. Bruh, you're just wrong. I know you're wrong. Like, if I look up a CDC study right now, it's going to say that people who took the shot had like a 90% reduced chance of developing secondary side effects. Like, having a 90% reduced chance means that, yeah, there can still be injuries, but your injuries are substantively less than the regular disease. So you're just like trotting out 5-year-old talking points that are wrong. All right, last couple. DD22E says, Connor proves there's no such thing as political phrenology because he's a fuck you. Because he's a blue-haired progressive. Yeah, eat a dick. I'm not a blue-haired progressive. Funny though. Fuck you, buddy. DD22E. I love you, but fuck you. All right. Bakar Baridi says, Counterpoints, would you say that Democrats were too trusting of scientists for shutdowns and vaccines? No. It was a scary time. We were all doing the best we could with the information we had. We're all doing the best we could. Let's continue with the content.
But there's a difficulty because you're giving your opposition ammunition to win the election. So something I've heard you time and time again say is the fact that Donald Trump, the Republicans are purposely leaving open the border so that they can run on that issue.
To be clear, Trump said that, yeah.
Yeah, to which I say, of course they are. It's politics. This is what politics is. People purposely leave issues to be able to win votes and win elections. Democrats do it with gun control. There's like on and on, but
sure, I feel like it's a race to the bottom then. Like, it seems like at that point, you're just like, every side is going to be endlessly sabotaging the other side, and then the country's just going to explode. And there's going to be nukes coming, and the people are going to be like, well, if we survive the nukes, the midterms are going to be really good for us.
There's people who talk like that, Stephen. There's 100% people who talk like that.
Year or two. I don't know. It just seems like not a great approach to things. But you want to you can have the last word. Go for it.
Yeah, overall, I think a really important thing to highlight is my main point there about the mindset of Trump and the way he does things. It wasn't really that I was arguing everyone should be racing to the bottom and completely ignoring whatever whatever benefits America just to aid their side. But when you're in a re-election season, I think it's really important to not mischaracterize the way people run in politics. And I feel like when you heavily say things like, Donald Trump does this and that, and like he's purposely not trying to pass the bill, he doesn't really care about immigration, doesn't really care about these issues. It's tough to argue that when we're in campaign season and people need votes to win. And that's a hard-bun issue. And I feel like it's not quite fair that you take that route. But
okay, can I ask one quick question? Yes or no? Yeah. Will you not feel great about the statement? I don't say you're wrong or whatever, but will you feel bad about the border thing in the bill if Donald Trump goes all 4 years and we don't get a single piece of legislation on the border? Or do you think it was worth it still?
See, the issue of the border is I'm a neocon Republican.
Okay.
So
Based King. Maybe that's why I agree with him so much.
So I strongly believe that immigration isn't actually the worst thing in the world. But
Yes, let's annex Central and South America. Jazz hands. Jazz hands in chat. Jazz hands in chat. There's another one of us. And by one of us, I mean one of me.
Also very pro-war on a lot of issues and stuff. So like the bombing Iran, supported.
Based. The world will learn of our peaceful ways through force.
It's tough for me to address the immigration thing because I know a lot of his base cares very heavily about that issue, but I'm kind of a bit more on the fence. I'm just mainly arguing on the notion that I think
this guy's problem is that he drank the contrarian Kool-Aid, where he realized that being a Republican is kind of like it's an unpopular position. And so he started steel manning the actions of the Trump admin instead of being like, yeah, that's actually pretty dumb. But as far as like whether or not we align on descriptive reality or like what politics are best, this guy and I would probably have a lot of alignment.
It's rough to argue that, oh, Republicans are doing this. You know what I mean?
I think he's probably ideologically captured, and he wants to steelman his own side as aggressively as possible and not acknowledge all of their faults and flaws to the maximal degree, which I think is bad. But I appreciate him. I appreciate him at trying to grapple with reality.
Okay, all right, just curious. All right, thanks for the conversation. Yeah.
All right, let's check in with chat before we move on, just because we're trying to bust these out into segments. And again, I parasocially love you. Faxamunder says, I think it's hard to be like, yeah, Dems messed up COVID too, and then point to the unhinged overreaction. The amount of vaccine hesitancy never equaled even close to the amount of vaccine injury. Thraxamunder, I don't know if I'm misunderstanding you, but it sounds like you're saying that there was more vaccine injury than there was vaccine hesitancy, which I don't even think is true. I don't even think it's borne out by stats. Fable says, nah, I'm not ever going to grant that Democrats having bad messaging when conservatards, not including you respectfully, willfully took Fauci et al. Out of context maliciously to spread vaccine denial. Yeah, I wouldn't either. KO Dave says, after seeing how the U.S. reacted to COVID, I came to the conclusion that Americans don't care about each other. It's true. We're individualists. Cale McCullough says, you're brainwashed. The mRNA experimental vaccine was not safe and effective. Just because more people get sick doesn't make it highly deadly. COVID was not highly deadly. I'm going to say this again. It's not as deadly as Ebola, okay? But even conservatives, even MAGA anti-vaccine people admit that there's like a 0.3% chance of dying from COVID, okay? Especially at the time, and especially with like old people. So that's old populations. So it's kind of hard to calculate because I don't know the exact demography of the United States, but I know we have 330 million people. So 330, 000, 000 times 0.03 is 9,900,000. So the worst case scenario would have been around 10 million people dead. So it seems like a combination of herd immunity, vaccination, and lockdowns reduced the death toll by 90%, because I think we lost like 1.1 million people. So if you divide that by 10, it's around a million. So we reduced the potential fatality of the disease by 90% through our combination, our plurality of tactics. But acting like, oh yeah, 1 million people dying is not a big deal, I think is absolutely stupid as shit. No offense. And the reason why is because we had 3,000 people die in 9/11 and a few $1 billion worth of damage. We could have shrugged that off. We could have said, terrorist attacks are part and parcel of a society. And so as a result, not that big of a deal. We could have rebuilt the tower. We could shrug off 3,000 dead, but we didn't. We launched a decade-spanning, multi-trillion-dollar war that killed hundreds of thousands of people. So if we're willing to do that, over 3,000 dead and a few $1 billion in damage, what should we do in reference to losing 1 million people? And shrugging it off and just going, meh, is not exactly good policy. I'm going to read some more chats because, fuck it, my stream. Gen X says, wow, at K, that sounds like even hell without COVID. Well, Gen X, relax. K loves her children. K says, Nathan's edgy phase sucks in a different way because of the attention he gets. Edgy phases at his age deserve to be anonymous. True. He'll be in his mid-20s, and if he chooses to be a public person, let's say that he continues like YouTubing and streaming because his dad can financially support his career. Not that he will, but he could. And then let's say that Nathan becomes like an internet personality in his own right. These clips will be used against him in the future, even if he's like a raging progressive lib. Fashion 40 says, what is it with the Groyper rhetoric that attracts the youth so much? It's edgy and contrarian, and it's fun to be a part of a secret society that's going to revolutionize the Western world. Team Wait, hold on. DD22E says, that's exactly my point. The current management getting fired is inevitable. Interesting. Team People says, my uncle didn't believe in COVID until he got it, wound up in a medical coma, and now has a world of medical issues that his family is forced to deal with because he can't work anymore. Right. And there's Team People. What I think I need to concede to the anti-vax people is that if your uncle had gotten the shot, there would still be a chance that he would receive a vaccine injury that would give him medical complications, but it would be 90% reduced compared to just getting the disease. And that's where, like, not acknowledging that there are vaccine injuries, it is what makes people like Cole socially relevant. No offense, Cole. The host of the show is reasonable, but he's still blue-pilled. He holds a lot of false presumptions, such as the COVID vaccine was safe and effective. You need to show proof. I mean, I could just Google the CDC, but I think you would dismiss the evidence from the CDC. Grassroots says, thinks it's just fine to say he's an effing creep. Not sure who you're talking about, but okay. As Bismal says, oh my God, the people on this panel are so unprepared, man. Well, we'll see how it goes. I'll read a few more. Thraxamundar says, I think the left needs to stop their bleeding heart tactics and just be like, let stupid people die from their own choices. Well, that's a libertarian perspective. The sad part is they are trying to protect the overall community. Yeah, liberals and progressives are temperamentally trying to protect the broader whole. What you just said is a libertarian perspective, which is social Darwinism, which, by the way, that's what I default to. When I get overwhelmed with the stupidity of the world, I default to a social Darwinist perspective where I'm just like, yeah, let stupid people kill themselves. You know, fuck it. Abaddon says, by the way, Mr. Girl is working on a second Destiny abuse report. I know you would definitely want this very important information. Lol. Yeah, I do. I think I saw it. I saw somebody covering the fact that Max is doing that. Listen, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to be real, okay? What's going to happen is if Steven's case gets dismissed, Pixie and her friends are going to talk shit about Steven and say it was unfair that the case got dismissed because it wasn't dismissed based off of its merits. It was dismissed based off of timeline. And there'll be like noise about it for a month or two. But then Steven's going to go back to normal, providing he's not a serial killer and he hasn't continued sending gooner material to everybody over the past 5 years. That's what's probably going to happen. Let's be real. If a settlement happens, because it does go to court and it does look like, you know, Pixie could win something, then Steven might settle, or he just might let her win, depending on how the court case is going. And then Steven will get a pay out a settlement. And then you're going to have to make a choice. If you're a Steven hater, then you can say, oh, he's an e-rapist. If you're a Steven apologist, then you can say, yeah, he fucked up, but he settled it. You know, who gives a shit? On the scale of things, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's a big deal because it fucks some people up, but it's not like actual rape or murder or something. So let's scale our outrage. That's what the Steven defenders are going to have to say. So either way, in my opinion, unless he's revealed to have been substantively worse than what we currently know, or a serial killer, he'll probably survive and have a career. Timur Konagov says, hey, Counterpoints, why on earth did you skip the Eldar when explaining 40K to Destiny? I mean, I shouldn't. I should explain the Dark Eldar to him. I should absolutely explain the Dark Eldar. He'd probably love the Dark Eldar. Master of Darkness says, at the end of this video, there's a really handsome guy with a St. Javelin shirt shaking Steven's hands. Who could that be? I wonder if it's Master of Darkness. Are we happy about Elon being deported? I mean, I would be, but I don't think it's going to happen. That's pretty funny. All right, one or two more. Cameron Mosley, how did you get your construction admin job? I started, Cameron Mosley, I'm sorry if this seems like something that's inaccessible, but law enforcement is effectively an admin job, and I also have admin jobs in my resume. And I had a friend who started working for an insurance company doing homeowners' properties adjustment. So I went and became an adjuster for 3 years. And I needed a bachelor's to do that. To be honest, I would not have gotten hired if I didn't have a bachelor's. And then I did a year and a half of sales for the same company. And then a local construction admin company actually just found me on Indeed and saw my current resume and was like, hey, why don't you come do what you do for the insurance company? Why don't you come do it for the contractors? And that's how I got that job. All right, back to the content.
We're only 30 minutes in and we already activated the first trap. So, okay. All right.
I'm going to use my phone for notes.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So recently, Trump had a meeting with the South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa. He brought up the issues being faced by white people in South Africa.
Fuck.
You reviewed this meeting. You were very critical of it. While I will acknowledge that Trump did say things during the meeting that were untrue, and that white genocide is hyperbolic and untrue, it was still a good thing that Trump brought up the topic of the struggles of white people in South Africa wanting to seek refuge in America, because they do have valid concerns. So I have 3 or 4 main arguments. The first one has to do with a party called the EFF, the Economic Freedom Fighters.
Sure. So just as a quick thing, the big issue I'm going to have with this isn't going to come down to the particular arguments relating to what white people in South Africa might face. I think my big criticism for that meeting, and the thing that I feel like is going to undermine...
Man, you should let him make his full argument. It feels like Steven's preempting, but that's okay. I understand it argumentatively.
The arguments you have is that if it was the fact that white people in South Africa were facing a threat related to racial stuff, related to maybe white genocide is hyperbolic, but whatever, I would argue that the way that Donald Trump approached that meeting just guarantees that this issue will never be taken seriously, and that whatever opportunity he had to take it a little bit seriously was completely ejected when he sat there like he was looking at brain rot memes for 20 minutes with the South African president like awkwardly looking back and forth between them.
Okay, I don't agree. I mean, I understand what you're saying, that the way Trump does things is a lot of times is awkward and goofy, and people really don't like it.
Wait, hold on. Let me just, I wouldn't say awkward and goofy.
Sure,
That's
sure.
how I would describe like hiring an incompetent clown for a 4-year-old's birthday party. I would say it's unprofessional. It's lacking leadership. I would say it's detrimental to U.S. domestic and foreign interest.
Okay.
And I would say it's deeply embarrassing for how we're viewed around the world. It's not just a joke.
I'm with Steven, but I want this guy to steel man the line of argumentation.
It's like
Okay.
It's really bad, I think. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, for this,
Eric Dom says, if Tiny thought you were pro-Trump, why did he think you were working with PV, and why would you have a show with Brianna Wu? Eric Dom, I would have to take a look at the timeline, but I don't know. This was related to the Hunter Biden blowout, where I was saying there was something substantive to the Hunter Biden stuff, and basically him, Straighteraid, and a few other people were like, no, you're a fucking idiot. That was a timeline. I don't know if I was working for PV at the time. If he was, he might not have been aware.
for this specific meeting, there were things that he said were untrue, but it was a good thing. They have genuine concerns, and it was a good thing that he brought attention to it in the way that he did, because it got a lot of attention and notice, and it's starting a conversation about it. And while he said some things were untrue, some of the things were true in that, like you talked about the white crosses, those weren't grave sites, but they were a protest against farm murders, which is a real problem there. And he did show, like, my first main point is the video he showed of the people, is the Economic Freedom Fighters. It's a political party that they routinely chant, kill the Boer, which is white South Africans, kill the farmer. They've done this for years, and they've done it as recently as last month. They make up about 10% of the voting bloc. And like, if there was an American party that routinely chanted kill race, whatever, we wouldn't be okay with that and just, brush it aside as a non-issue. So, I mean,
true. This is my frustration. So we took a look at the stats, and I think there's 4 million white South Africans, and I think there's around like 55 farm murders every single year. And I think that like 10 to 20 of those end up being black South African farm workers. And so as a result, you wouldn't necessarily say that those murders are like race motivated. It could be the fact that they view those black farm workers as race traitors because they're serving white interest, at which point there's still a racist component. And some of the stories of the farm murders are like horrific, like families being tortured in front of each other, kids getting murdered in front of their parents, people being like boiled alive inside their own bathtubs, strangled, all that kind of shit. So there's actually some like really, really, really fucked up stories that come from racially motivated farm murders. The reason why I would take that seriously, I would take that level of racial animus, that level of racial hatred very seriously, because I think it has the potential to destabilize society. But if you look at the stats, again, it's like 50 people per year. are killed on farms. Not all of those are going to be those extreme racially motivated stuff. Some of them are going to be crimes of opportunity. And also with a population of 4 million, that doesn't mean that there's a white genocide in South Africa. It just means that there's some racist fucking assholes who use racial grievance as an excuse in order to commit horrific crimes. And those people need to be hunted and killed by the state. So I'm okay with this guy trying to steel man the white South African position. I don't like Stephen being so dismissive of it, but I also understand that you don't want to give white genocide narrative people ammunition. So I get it. Tony Koning says, I'm so happy to have found the stream. It's really helping me shape my worldviews. Thank you for your insight, counterpoints. Your perspective brings so much clarity to a confusing mind. I appreciate you saying that. I'm doing this stream for you and for people like you, because people who are like naturally curious and have no idea where to go, and the world is filled with lying, deceitful, manipulative pieces of shit. I might not be right, and I might get some things factually incorrect, but I promise you, I will tell you the truth as I see it. That is a guiding principle. I'm never going to tell you something that I think is incorrect just because it's more convenient for me.
I won't make any parallels to Maga right now, because that would be mean. But I guess the issue, I mean, we invoked the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelans under the guise that we're at war with a country because of a gang that exists there. That's kind of crazy, I think, right?
Deportation is not the same as chanting for the murder of people.
That's true. I would argue deporting somebody to like an actual like hostile prison is worse than.
Okay. I would view this as like a what about tactic, where instead of talking in detail about the white South African issue, we're moving to, isn't the Trump admin bad in this other regard? Which is fine. Like, we can talk about the Trump admin being bad in another regard, but I would actually view this as a slightly evasive tactic on Stephen's part.
Just a chant. Like, we did do that. Like, we started to deport people to El Salvador. I think that's really bad, right?
Okay.
Like,
hold on. Peter Mars says something really funny. I said that Democrats have good intentions, but then their policies often have second and third order consequences that are bad for people. Whereas Peter Mars says, as opposed to Republicans who have policies that hurt people on purpose. I mean, you got me there. You got me there. You won in the marketplace of ideas.
but the so this is, again, I'm going to reiterate this point. What you just brought up, I don't know anything about that. I might have, though, if Trump would have used that meeting as an opportunity to actually bring that up and actually address it, rather than showing what seemed to be like an actual Twitter highlights compilation.
It's a real video. The video he showed is a real video of a real political, but they're the fourth largest political party in South Africa.
Yeah, I understand, but it's the president of the United States.
And he showed videos of farm murders protesting a real issue.
Yes, but
you can take issue with, okay, there was one photo he showed that was from the Congo, and they weren't technically grave sites, and the guy...
Wouldn't it be better to have like an actual professional conversation about that?
You can always say, how could we have improved the situation? But the point is, he brought attention to the issue. And it's a real issue.
Like,
yes, I'm talking about it now with you, and it's brought up the national conversation.
Yeah,
there's more videos on YouTube about it.
People have been talking about this issue for like a decade for South Africa, right?
Yeah, it's been an issue, but I think people are talking about it more now since the meeting.
Okay, I would be surprised if anything of substance came out with regards to South Africa. It felt to me, I don't know your feeling on it, but it felt to me like it was a big pet project for Elon, and I think he kind of pushed it onto Trump. I don't know if Trump himself cares about it that much. I would be shocked.
I'm sure Elon feels personally connected because he's from South Africa.
Yeah, like I'm sure Elon does. I'm willing to bet that Trump thinks that South Africa just means like the southern part of Africa. He doesn't even know that's a country. That'd be my guess.
Steven's being a smug asshole. If you agree with him, then you're gonna enjoy this. For me, though, the reason why I'm not enjoying it as much, like obviously, I can be quite callous about certain violent historical incidents. So, the reason why I don't enjoy this though is because there's an issue in South Africa. As a matter of fact, geopolitics time. Geopolitics time. Some people really like Geopol. Some people really don't care, and their eyes glaze over and they stop paying attention almost immediately. South Africa maps. So, what happened originally? This is South Africa. Before the existence of the Suez Canal, Europeans had to sail around Africa in order to get to India. All right. And so the original people to settle here, I think, were the Dutch, right? So people from northwestern Europe, and they actually liked South Africa because it was temperamentally, like temperature-wise, very similar to Northern Europe. And so they established Cape Town, and they established the surrounding area. And Cape Town became wildly important because it was a trade stop between India and Europe. And so South Africa grew quite rich, but there's, of course, like an indigenous population of Black Africans, and there was a racial caste structure. The English conquered this territory from the Dutch, and so it became a blend of Dutch, English, and South African culture. Some Dutch went out into the Northeast, and they established the country of Rhodesia, which was like this, you know, it was mythologized to be like this white paradise. But what happened is they got attacked by surrounding rebels, and they weren't supported by the international community, and they also had a racial caste structure. And so as a result of that, Rhodesia eventually fell and became Zimbabwe. So South Africa maintained its white caste system and its anti-miscegenation laws. So if you were white or Black, you couldn't like race mix. And so it's a pretty, you know, at least historically, it's a fairly racist country. And Nelson Mandela is viewed as like a hero of South Africa because while not fully pacifist, he only engaged in necessary violence. He was imprisoned for decades. And eventually the apartheid structure, where there was like a racial caste system, was eventually cast down. Now, what happened in the wake of that system, though, is that like white farmers owned a disproportionate amount of land, wealth, and power in politics. So there's been communists in South Africa who have antagonized for redistribution of assets and also have used like racial grievances of the past 100 years in order to say, fuck white people, we should kill them all. And that's the EFF. And so my frustration with what Destiny's like flippant attitude is that there's white South Africans who do feel like they're on the verge, they're already being, in their opinion, economically and socially persecuted with nobody really giving a shit because they're like the white colonizing, evil, racist pieces of shit. And then further than that, there are government entities that just call either for all of their property to be confiscated and for them to be politically disenfranchised and or for them to be slaughtered. And so I would, while you can say like, okay, it's not a genocide because they're not engaged in it, you know, industrial scale slaughter against whites, you can still care. You can still care about them as human beings. You can still say we need to push for some level of social and economic justice and harmony between Black South Africans and white South Africans in order to alleviate the potential murder of white folks in South Africa. And it needs to be just for all parties involved. That's not a problem. So I kind of don't like Stephen's flippant attitude. End of geopolitical rant.
I don't see, do you realistically think in the next few years, do you think the United States is going to make any headway there in terms of?
No, we're not going to care because it's not that big of a deal and it doesn't affect our material interest. And even if there's like an extra few dozen murders of white farmers, it's not going to affect American foreign policy.
Pressuring South Africa or, you know, using any kind of soft power or whatever to get them to alleviate whatever issue this is? Or do you think Trump will talk about it a single time for the rest of the 3 years he's in office?
Yeah.
I don't know what he's going to do.
But like, isn't that bad? Isn't that disappointing? Like,
no,
know?
I'm making a simple argument.
Sure.
My simple argument is that it was good that he brought it up during the meeting. You can hypothesize about what he's going to do in the future, what he will or will not do. I'm saying it was a good thing that he brought attention to the issue during this meeting. I have a bunch of reasons to say why. I'm dying to say some of them. But you just keep saying, I don't like the way he did the meeting. And I acknowledge your issues with the way he did the meeting, but I'm just saying there's real issues here.
I'm
And
sure
we-
there are
we
real
should be
issues,
talking about it.
but like we can relate this to Iran. I don't want Iran to have nuclear weapons. I actually fully support any strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. But having Donald Trump do it, who doesn't have like a cohesive vision or plan for the Middle East, and then having him explain it, worries me that there will be like a chilling effect on that type of conversation, or that
True.
any military action that we do in the Middle East is going to be viewed in such a negative lens because of the way that he's approaching it, because of the way he's spoken about it. Like, it sucks.
True. Jazz hands for Steven. Jazz hands. Jazz hands for Steven.
But optics, when you're the leader of a country and people listen to the words you say, I think are really important. And the idea of kind of squandering the opportunity to bring up a really important issue, like, again, you're not even sure if the president would even bring this up again. And I think that's deeply troubling if it's an issue that we care about, you know?
I feel like we're having two different conversations. Okay. I'm trying to make
Steven, let him talk about the white South African issue.
one argument, and then you're saying, well, these other things that aren't, like, do you acknowledge that white people face an issue in South Africa and they may have a legitimate claim to refugee status in America? Or do you still refer to it as like a neo-Nazi conspiracy theory?
Well, I think that I was close friends with some people who believe that they were neo-Nazis. I don't know.
He's talking about Lauren and Lauren's friends. That's funny. Like, I don't know if he's accusing Lauren of being a neo-Nazi, but Lauren clearly shot what is it? Was it Farmlands? I forget, but she has like 2 white South African documentaries.
To the extent that there is legitimately white like hunting issue with farmers in South Africa that's based around like repatriation of land that black people feel was stolen from them. That might be a real issue. It might not be. I'm kind of agnostic on it. I lean a little bit on that. I feel like it's a little bit exaggerated by the neo-Nazi people, but I doubt it's.
Are we gonna have to watch Farmlands? Are we gonna have to watch Farmlands on stream? Is that gonna be the next Counterpoints Destiny collab? Is we're gonna meet in the Anything Else studio and we're gonna watch Lauren Southern's documentary together? I think that's fire content.
A totally fictitious issue, but all I'm saying is, however real that issue is, we're never going to talk about it again in the U.S. because Trump doesn't know anything about it. And
okay, so let him talk about it now so he can have his little pet project speech. Steven, you're being rude.
The little
How do you
opportunity.
know that? You're just saying, oh, we're never going to talk about it again. Nothing's ever going to be done. Like, this is
I'm going by what I
you start with a conversation. You start with bringing it up, and then we'll see what happens. But you can't just dismiss the topic and say, oh, well, Trump's not going to bring it up again, so we don't need to talk about it now. Or it's the. Well,
I mean, we can talk about it, but if it was an issue that I cared about, I would kill myself if Donald Trump was the first one to bring it up in that manner on stage. I'd be like,
He's
fuck, like, it feels like nobody's going to
Steven's just being cute and funny. I don't think he's actually engaging.
have any investment in this issue now. And you had like the leader of South Africa here to talk about it, and now you have completely squandered it, right? Like, I guess I wouldn't compare it maybe to the Zelensky talk, but like that's another conversation where it's like it's such a bombed convo that regardless of how you felt about it, any opportunity it feels to have any awareness brought on that issue is just completely squandered because of the way that Trump conducts himself. I understand that your conversation...
Bruh, okay, but hold on. This is a criticism of this guy now, though. There was a pause in the conversation where he got done. At this point, if you have stones and you're used to the debate scene, then you would say, okay, Steven, I heard you. I appreciate your perspective that you don't think Donald Trump is the right person to bring this up. I heard you and I acknowledge your line of argumentation. But I think this is a serious problem, and I want to bring some facts to your audience's attention, or the audience here's attention. Therefore, please give me a minute or two to go over some facts that I have prepared for this conversation. And then Steven looks like he's being an asshole if he interrupts you while you highlight your argument. So actually, I think this guy is unprepared for being being ready to have a platform and fight for his view on the platform.
And I'm not trying to deprive you of the notes that you took.
Oh, but you are, you son of a bitch.
I got a lot of notes. I'm
Yeah.
dying to say some of them.
So shut up, Steven. You tell him to shut up, and then you go over your notes.
If you want to, go through a couple, I'm uncomfortable because I can't push back again to say any of it. But if you want to go through a couple, you can. But I think my primary argument is going to be
Let me hit some notes here.
Yeah,
okay?
go ahead, hit a few, go for
Okay.
it.
Okay, we got there. It took us a minute, but we got there.
farm murder. So the EFF, I think that's a major issue.
Okay.
Economic freedom fighters. You got the farm attacks and farm murders.
How many per year, though? Because all the stats that I looked up was about 50 per year, and there's a 4 million. Part of that is black, and there's 4 million white South Africans in the country. So 40 per year is not going to result in a genocide.
The government says that they're mostly robbery oriented and that it's not racially motivated, but I think we have reasons to doubt that. Did you watch Lauren's documentary on it?
Yep.
Okay.
Let's watch it again.
So when it came to the
He's laughing because he just said, oh, I have a bunch of neo-Nazi friends or whatever. And he's probably talking about either Lauren or Lauren's orbiters. And by orbiters, Lauren doesn't have a lot of orbiters, but she has people that she's worked with documentaries.
the Blood Sisters and them describing how, like, a lot of the murders, it's not just like a simple, someone attacking a farmer just to get his property. They're like torturing them to death. Like, she gave an example where they took a 12-year-old boy and drowned him in boiling water. And there's a lot of examples of people being tortured in these attacks, which kind of imply more of a racial hatred motivation rather than just a simple robbery.
Yep.
Did you watch this? Did you have an opinion on that, or?
I mean, assuming that it's done for racial hatred and assuming like these are ongoing, how many? My understanding is the number of people who've been killed are pretty low when it comes to like farmers for the racial targeting and everything, right? Over the past
from what I know, I think it's an average of 500 attacks and 60 murders a year. So,
which is about right.
Okay, that's a little higher than what I heard, but that might be closer to accurate.
I could
stop being defensive. Let him continue.
Be wrong. That's the number I saw today.
Again, I'm not super well read into this issue. I guess I just
right.
I don't understand. Like, these are all things that could have been brought up by Trump or somebody.
Okay, could have. You could have done all kinds of things. Okay,
so we're not here to debate South Africa and the genocide. We're here to talk about the guy on the fucking poster. Okay,
the video was legitimate.
Okay, in
a sense, it was. So I mean, they also said that the attacks are higher than what the government is saying. But they also said they couldn't go into too much detail because they work closely with the government, which made me think they're telling the truth, because they're like, okay, well, what motive would they have to lie about it? But if they're saying, hey, they work with the government, so we kind of have to be careful about what we say or we'll get in trouble, to me that shows they don't have a motive to lie. They would actually have a motive to keep quiet about it. So
I don't think this is entirely true, because if you get international attention for the farm attacks and the tortures and the murders or whatever, then you might get international sympathy that can then help you get local legislative reform. So I'm going to let it play for like another minute or two, and then I'm going to interrupt, react, and read some chats.
And just the way they said it made it seem like they were telling the truth to me, that the number of attacks is actually even higher than what the government's reporting.
Then we'll give you one more point off your list. Find a good one, yeah?
I have so many.
I'm sure.
The example of what happened in Zimbabwe, that was really bad. They took land.
Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia.
Oftentimes violently from white farmers, and it led to economic collapse, starvation, hyperinflation, really bad things. We don't want to repeat of that in the South Africa. They're neighboring countries. And basically the current trajectory of South Africa is not good. They had a good period from 94 when they got rid of apartheid and Mandela was elected. They had a good period of consistent economic growth every year, including a growing black middle class from like 94 to 2008. But then around 2008, everything changed because they didn't invest in their power grid, and President Zuma got elected, and he was really corrupt, and the government's been basically really corrupt since then. And so the government has a crumbling infrastructure, stagnating economy, high unemployment, high crime. And this is, I don't want to just focus on the white people. This is even worse for the black people.
Sure. Okay.
So it's worse for everyone.
So I guess my only question, and I'll give you the last word on this. My only question is if there's an issue that you feel passionately about, if there's an issue that you're read into, and it's an issue that you'd like to see improve, I don't understand how you couldn't be so irritated watching Trump just completely waste an entire potential.
What I will concede in my criticism is that this debate panel isn't about white South Africa and the potential issues that white South Africans face. It is about Trump. And so if it's about Trump, this guy can come up and say, well, Trump is talking about a serious issue, and Stephen can still say, yes, but in an incompetent way. And they can just circle on that over and over again. So since they're going to circle on that over and over again, I'm going to read my chat. J-Man says, now the people are leaving Florida after the last round of hurricanes. Well, good, Because if you didn't know that Florida had hurricanes, you're a wussy. And if a bunch of wind and rain makes you leave, you're a coward. I amped 30 says Destiny likes to code switch. Which code is this? No idea. King Slime says you keep under 50 out of public to reduce the amount of people over 50 dealing with carriers of the virus. Yes. Sacred Snow says, to be fair, I think was the response valid based on the outcome isn't a fair framing, though, which should judge the response when it comes to disease. When you're dealing with disease, you're going to be based off of projections and playing it safe, because if you're wrong, millions of people die. If you want to pull up a timeline of known versus response, fine, but I think it's uncharitable at best. Sure. But Sacred Snow, now that we've all been through, generationally, probably the worst pandemic since the Spanish flu, we need to be ready for the next one. So if the next one is going to be another flu, another cold, another SARS, another COVID-2, another one of those, then we need to be ready with a response that's appropriately proportional. If we get an Ebola virus that's as contagious as COVID, then we have to throw out the playbook, because that will be an entirely different animal. JS says, we didn't know how dangerous COVID was at first. That's why everybody locked down. You can argue that it lasted too long, but not that it happened. Sure. I'm talking about now that we have a retrospective analysis, we need to analyze it in order to build better policy for the next one. The King Slime says, not saying it was right or wrong, but that was at least the ideal. Sure. J-Man says, yeah, people are getting hosed and homeowners insurance went up a lot. Fair. Kale says, no, natural immunity was vastly superior to vaccine. mRNA is not a normal vaccine. It hijacks your cells to reproduce. The RNA didn't contain the inside proteins of the virus. Dude, you're a fucking talking points machine. Kale says, I'm an engineer and I built a COVID ventilator, and the way people were dying from their lungs giving out from pneumonia, from lack of exercise, the heart clots from COVID vax was real. Okay, good for you, bro. I'm probably going to move on from the topic shortly. KO Dave says, Counterpoints, COVID was a novel virus. We didn't know what a COVID infection would look like. We didn't know what the most risk was. All lockdowns were the correct call at the time. Okay. LB says, Trader Trump was present when the lockdown started. What do Democrats have to do with it? Because come on, LB, you act obtuse for no fucking reason. Operation Warp Speed was under Trumpito goldfish memories. No, LB, no, because there was the general federal guidance that then got passed down to the states. Then there were Democratic lawmakers who were telling Trump to enforce it on a national level. But there were Republican state representatives who pushed back on Trump and said, we're going to do what we want to do. And so there was Democratic and left-leaning and center Republican pressure for Trump to be more locked down. And then there was libertarian and conservatarian pushback against it. And Trump listened to the libertarians and conservatarians and allowed Republican states to remain more open than Democratic states. So you have the goldfish memory, not me. Thraxamundar says, the fact that Destiny is getting so much agreement shows how hollow these arguments are. I don't know. You can still be a passionate person who opposes Steven. Tofu says, my issue is there were fields that tended to have old people still working, USPS and teachers, for example, so kids do what they want, go to school sick, then expose parents and teachers to COVID. Sure, but there's some level of pragmatic function that we have to appeal to. So, for instance, I think sending all the agricultural workers home was an obvious mistake. Agricultural workers needed to get like PPE, personal protective equipment, and they needed to keep working. That was a vital industry that should have kept working. All right. Anyways. Rizla for 50 NOK. As a Norwegian, it seems that Norwegians in the EU have lost a lot of respect for the US since MAGA COVID, and now this term. What is the view in the US? That we deserve it. Rizla, we deserve your loss of respect. LB says, Connor, are you slow? Wow, now with the ableism, LB? Really? Trump agreed to the lockdown. Stop spreading misinformation. It's not the Democratic Party, it's the executive branch. I just already refuted your argument. So no, it is you. It is you who are slow, LB. Drow Slayer QC says, a never seen virus causing respiratory distress. Better safe than sorry. Okay. Emily says, hey, Connor. Hi from Taiwan. Hello. Grassroots is 110, baby. Effin fell asleep, standing up inside of a control panel. Lol. Okay, well, get some sleep, buddy. Take a nap. Sen Patty says, I lost respect for my own country, to be honest. It's hard as hell to talk to my MAGA family members outside of small talk. Yeah, actually, I'll go back to that comment real quick. Rizla, I'll say I have people who are wildly intelligent around me who are either one, supportive of Trump, which pisses me off to no end, or two, they make excuses for Trump, which pisses me off just as much. So yeah, like trust me, the loss of respect is universal. Don't worry about it. LB says you should lose respect. Yeah. You guys are all agreeing with me. All right, last one. Old School says lightning imbued water. Are you going to develop superpowers, Connor? Let me guess, telepathy. Hopefully. All right, back to the content. Let's see if we can get some white South African propaganda in our earballs.
Meeting where he has the
he
world.
he brought up the issue not in the perfect way, but he brought it up. I could be wrong. I never saw Biden bring it up during his presidency. At least he brought it up. Maybe he didn't do it perfectly, but at least he brought it up.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. In summary, you should care about white South Africans, but Trump sucks at rhetoric. That's the summary of that argument. Two more. Razzle Smashers is heading out to the city to hopefully find a Switch 2 today. Heading up to the Best Buy is doing an in-person restock. I'll be listening, but I'll be driving, so I won't be in chat. Wish me luck. Good luck, Razzle. Good luck. Charles Burrows says younger people could have been able to move freely if there was a unified understanding of social distancing from the 50 and above group during the pandemic. Otherwise, they're the deliverer. Sure. All right. I'm moving on from COVID. I'm going to scroll past it. You guys are still fighting about ventilator deaths caused by pneumonia because the lungs weren't being properly exercised. You're arguing about natural immunity versus herd immunity and vaccines and all that bullshit. And frankly, if I was YouTube, I would have banned the topic just because I would have been sick of seeing people talk about it. Rizla says, would you be able to address my super chat? I really enjoyed your content. I feel like you could give a more sort of centric view to the U.S. relations of other countries. Yeah. So Rizla / DGG chatters who are new to the stream. You have to understand, we're at 170 right now, cross-platform. I'm used to streaming to 50 people, okay? And with 50 people, I can scroll through the whole chat and I can read almost everybody's chat. I might miss one on occasion, but I can read almost everybody. And that core group was very supportive, not just grassroots hegemon, but people like Dr. Zayas and Gen X and Christian Valeris and Jonah Boy. They showed up every single day and they gave what they could in order to support the stream. And so there's a lot of new people, and I love each and every one of you for being here, but I still want to keep up the culture of the stream where I will read what's happening in chat regardless of whether or not you're giving money. Now, since there's 150 people chatting instead of 50, it's harder to keep up. So what I do is I bookmark the chat and then I scroll through it and I read everything. So I am going to be like 20 minutes, 30 minutes behind on chat, but I'm still going to be engaging with my community or my chatters way more than any other streamer that I know. No offense to Destiny or Chud Logic or Nick Diorio. They're all very successful streamers, but effectively because they're up in the thousands, which I understand there's a pragmatic appeal for me to just ignore my chat and just stream and create the content. But since they're up in the thousands, the only thing they acknowledge are very large donations. And to my knowledge, they don't even read the super chats until the end of stream. So for me, that's just like, everybody's just like throwing cash into the wind, hoping their favorite parasocial streamer reads their chats. Whereas I'm just a schmo, you know, I'm just a dude. And I happen to have enough people supporting me that I can continue this as a job. I feel very lucky. So I still want to engage with brokies. So if you're a wage cage slave, if you're just paying your bills, if you're just getting by, et cetera, I don't need your money. But it's appreciated, but I don't need it. And so I still want to read your chats anyways. Ninu says, why can't we rely on the U.S. as an ally and have to decouple in order to keep ourselves safe? I don't think it'll go that far. I think that the Trump admin they'll become lame ducks in the midterms. They'll be out in 2028, and they will not have the same political cultural relevance that they once did because, frankly, there's not another Trump waiting in the wings. DeSantis has autism. J.D. Vance has autism. Neither one of them are as charismatic as Trump. All of the Trump kids are fail sons. None of them have their dad's charisma. And so as a result, you know, there might be imitations of Trump, but I don't think there's going to be another Trump. And I think the imitations of Trump are going to be more agreeable to the powers that be, and therefore will return to a level of stability. So, anyways, I'm going to continue the content and bookmark the chat.
Nice to meet you, Destiny. How you
Hey,
doing?
nice to meet you, dude. Nice to meet you, dude.
I already know this one is going to be extreme amounts of psychic damage. I'm very excited.
Hello, hello. Testing, testing. Does this sound okay? All right, let me get comfortable. So when I decided to do this bait a week ago, I was gonna take how Trump actually was anti-war, how he didn't want. Yeah, and you all know what happened last night. So
I'm so ready.
my question, like, you can't defend it. And another thing too,
Yes, you can.
I'm an amateur rookie content creator. Last week, I decided to get into the political sphere. And before this debate, I cracked a Red Bull, stayed up all night, and studied the Middle East and studied the Trump's administration position in it. And I realized you cannot even defend what Trump is doing in the Middle East.
Holy shit. Is this the aesthetic that I need to adopt? Do I need to put on sunglasses and do uppers? Christ, it feels like there's a billion of these people. And then answering KO Dave real quick. Counterpoints, is it Connor or Connor? It's one N, Conor.
What makes you feel any better, the experience that you had trying to put that argument together is how we all felt watching Biden in his last debate. So,
Well, for all the other debaters in here, all the people who were pro-Trump, MAGA got scammed. We genuinely got scammed.
Oh, you fucking nerd.
He ran off an anti-war campaign, and that's not what happened at all. My question for you, Destiny, is: are you anti-war?
no.
You're not anti-war in the Middle East?
Well, war, no. I feel like it's weird to ask somebody in a country that was born of revolution to say we're anti-war or not.
Base! Neocon destiny. Neocon destiny. Neocon destiny. Let's go.
Right? I think the question always has to be, what is the war? Is it justified or not? And then on what terms do we fight it, right?
That's true, but would you ever go to war in the Middle East?
Hell yeah, they got 2/3 of the world's petroleum. We got to stabilize that shit for civilization to function.
Yourself?
Me personally?
Yeah.
I got really big bone spurs. Isn't that what Donald Trump?
Me too. Well, I don't have bone spurs. I did.
I think if someone were never to go to fight themselves, they are inherently anti-war. I think you are anti-war as well. I think you're a conscientious guy, and I don't think you want people to die, correct?
Yeah. The problem when people say like they're anti-war and you say like I don't want people to die is the unfortunate reality is sometimes you don't have a choice, right? Like if there's one side that wants to engage in certain behavior that's going to lead to civilian death, it doesn't make much sense to say, well, I don't want to go to war with that person because people will die if I go to war, right? At some point, a war is going to be forced upon you. It's just whether or not you want it on your terms, right?
Do you think the Democratic Party inherently has an act of letting people die overseas? Not Americans, but other sides where they could get involved and prevent certain deaths and whatnot?
Well, I mean, the fundamental question is why do we get involved in foreign conflict? And the goal is generally it has to align with U.S. interests, right? Or regions that we're interested in or interests of U.S. allies. It's not just to stop death. Otherwise, we'd be way more involved in other regions, right?
Yep. Like 2/3 of the world's energy reserves sitting under Iran and Saudi Arabia. Yep.
Okay, well, under the Biden administration, 48,000 Palestinians died. I don't think that.
Okay, so I'm just going to point this out real quick because a lot of people understand this and a lot of people don't. So plastic is a petroleum byproduct. There's a chance that the lacquer for this piano is some kind of plastic synthetic, layer. This water bottle is made out of plastic and there's trillions of them across the United States of America. There's bottles back here that probably have some level of plastic packaging that they were shipped in. This, green screen is probably some kind of weird synthetic plastic infused cloth for durability. There's plastic elements to this microphone right here, plastic elements to the microphone stand right here, plastic elements throughout. This rubber, I forget, rubber comes from rubber trees, but I think there's also like a softer plastic that is very often used as a substitute for rubber. Then these sunglasses are plastic. The gel that he uses probably has some level of like plastic byproduct in it. So effectively, we're looking at the screen, and 80% of the things in the room have some level of petroleum byproduct. Petroleum is the lifeblood of civilization, okay? 2/3 of the world's proven petroleum reserves are in the Middle East and North Africa. We don't have to have like a 2-year-old's understanding of petroleum to be like, well, the United States doesn't literally control the countries. No shit. It provides the physical security that's necessary in order to make sure that world trade continues. Okay. LB says that's not based. I find it funny that you think other countries don't have sovereignty. Very fascist of you. Yep. I'm a neocon. I like soft power. I like hard power projection. I like republicanism. I think it's the right way to go. And I think that we should project republicanism worldwide. If you're an oligarchical, kleptocratic dictatorship shithole, I think that you should be undermined until eventually you become a mixed economy, capitalist, liberal republic. And then same thing if you're a theocratic state or if you're a communist state. I think that you should be undermined through soft power and you should be challenged through hard power until you eventually collapse. I do believe that. So fuck them. Fuck Islamism. Fuck authoritarian communism. And fuck fascism.
That's in the United States' interest. Nor do I think it's not in our interest. But that being said, I think it's a genocide, and I don't think that. I think it's wrong.
Brave.
You don't think it's wrong that
I think it's wrong.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a perspective that you're allowed to have. I don't want to argue against for it.
So my question, you said you
sorry. I know we're here for the content, but Normal Robot says we had 0 COVID in our neighborhood because we're all into Petroleum sunning at the time, and it turns out that vitamin D proteins you get from it occupy the spike protein sites. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Petroleum your butthole? Normal Robot says that I didn't get COVID because I flashed sunshine on my butthole. I love you, Normal Robot. Please show up every day. Oh, that is awesome. I didn't get COVID because I put sunlight on my butthole. Okay, I get that might be boring for you, but I'm gonna enjoy that for a little bit.
You don't want war.
I never said I don't want war. I mean, war is a thing that countries engage in sometimes. Like, unfortunately, it has to be a just use of war, right? Like, no one's opposed to violence. No one would say we should get rid of, well, some people might say we should get rid of all of the police, but like, we have to have some form of violence in society between countries to enforce or to defend yourself, right?
Do you think there should be a regime change in Iran?
Do I think there should be? I don't know what would come afterwards, and whether or not there should or shouldn't be is a fundamentally different question than like, should we force it or should Israel force it? I don't know. It's a big country. There's a lot of people. I don't know what the stability of that would look like afterwards. I do know that regardless of what lays beyond, I guess, the current strikes, though, do you want Iran to possess nuclear weapons?
I think if Israel has nuclear weapons, I think Iran should too. I don't think.
So do you think that the overall?
So we'll have a 3-way nuclear standoff. So actually, somebody makes a good point in chat. I missed a decimal. So I did 0.03 for reference to COVID. I did 0.03 multiplied by 330 million, which would be representative of 3% of the population. Whereas statistically, it's 0.0 sorry, it would be like 0.003 in order to get 0.3%, which is 990,000, which is the approximate amount of death that we actually had. So yeah, good point.
Temperature of the Middle East would be higher or lower? Do you think it'd be more stable or less stable if Iran had nuclear weapons?
Thank you, Tofu. You were correct.
It'd be less stable. But that being said, if you look at the history, again, I'm no political expert, but I study the history of Israel. They have initiated every single war since their history.
Shut up.
And every single conflict that resulted of them initiating war was brought upon them.
This guy has 80 IQ. Sin Patty says, make sure the nerds like the stream. Yes, please like the stream. Quick shill time. Like the stream. It's free. It helps us in the algorithm. Lets other people know that we're live and they'll come and hang out. Share it with your friends. Watch the VODs. Super chats if you got them. Memberships if you got them. And then what I would say in reference to this guy is that the State of Israel was established in 1948. It's had half a dozen wars since its inception and small conflicts as a result. A lot of the time, the Arab states were building up in order to do invasions, and then Israel did a preemptive strike. But what happened immediately after those quote-unquote preemptive strikes is like 3 or 4 Arab countries attacked Israel at once. So, no, I'm perfectly fine with Israel going to war with its neighbors if its neighbors wanted to wipe it off of the face of the planet. And within the past decade or two, these states have normalized relations with Israel, which means that, you know, the Palestinian cause, in my opinion, needs to be resolved with a two-state solution. But realistically, we're looking at potential peace in the Middle East in the next century if Israel stabilizes its borders.
You disagree?
Yeah, but I don't know how we do the whole history of Israel Palestine, or
It's not even just Palestine. It's
I mean, an easy one would be in 73. That was a surprise war launched by the Arab states, right? The Yom Kippur War in 73. There's no way you could say Israel started that one at the least, right?
yeah, but they also initiated conflict with Egypt and Libya.
Well, they'd been in conflict for decades since the foundation of the country.
So if you go all the way back to Israel's founding in 1948, who do you think really initiated the conflicts which created the domino effect that we are like where we are today?
I don't know, God, when he created the planets and the universe.
Do you believe in God though?
True. Destiny's being sarcastic, but yes. Unironically, putting your chosen people at the crossroads of humanity kind of geopolitically screwed them over.
No.
Okay.
So I guess the
there you
Big
go.
Bang, I don't know. I mean,
Geopull. Sorry, chat is way more intelligent than oftentimes the people that we're watching. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at Israel maps. Excusame. Okay. So if you're in Asia and you want to get to Europe, you have to go through the Middle East and North Africa, and there's a strong chance that you're going to bump into Israel, and or you'll just bypass it through Turkey, but you can get to Israel pretty easily from Asia. If you're in Europe and you want to go to Asia, same thing. If you're in Africa and you want to get to Europe and you don't want to use the ocean, then you're going to go through Israel. If you're in, I mean, I think that's just true. Africa into Asia, Africa into Europe, you're going to go through Israel. Europe to Africa, you're going to go through Israel. And then Asia to Europe and Europe to Asia, you're going to go through this region. So the truth is that God, by choosing the Jews as his chosen people and having them occupy this territory, he geopolitically screwed them to be at the crossroads of humanity. Destiny brought up an excellent point.
I mean, even the framing of that question is very loaded. Go back to the beginning of Israel in 48. Well, why not to the Kingdom of Israel?
Okay.
Well,
do you support Israel and do you support the foreign aid in which we give to them?
I'd say largely, yeah.
But you don't want a conflict with Iran? Because you and Donald Trump have a lot in common if you really think about it.
You gotta, when you say you don't want conflict with Iran, like, no, but I mean, if you see a guy like walking to your house, you know, and he's got like a bomb on him, and you shoot the guy in the driveway, do you say like, "Well, did you want conflict with the guy?" He's like, "No, but he was going to blow my shit up." So
Okay.
it's like these questions. I feel like they don't get to the root of the issue. That's why I asked earlier: would Iran with a nuclear weapon, would that be more stability for the region or less? And it seemed like you said it was less. So why would we want a scenario that is inherently less stable, especially when nuclear weapons are involved?
Okay, you're right. We can go back to Israel's founding. We can go back 4,000 years to Babylon and Israel. But let's just rewind the clock a week ago.
Silver Jacket, man, I love you, but this is cringe, okay? True, but the U.S. had 332 school shooting incidents in 2024. Do you think it would have been cool for the South African PM to bring up our school shooting issue in the same meeting? Yeah, sure. But Silver Jacket, man, I need you to differentiate this because, no offense, Democrats piss me off with this line of thinking, okay? What? What? Why are you staring at me? Why are you staring at me like I'm cringe? Oh, okay. May I have water, please? Love you. Okay. So, even though my wife is staring at me and accusing me of being cringe with her eyeballs, okay? When you say there's 332 shootings at schools, what people think is that there's 332 Columbines where some dickhead shows up with a gun and blasts like a dozen of his classmates. That's what people think. But 332 school shootings, I almost guarantee you one, maybe two of them were attempted mass shootings and or they were mass shootings. I don't remember one in 2024, but you know, it's possible. We have so many of them that it's possible that there was one and I just didn't remember it. But what 332 school shootings mean to the degree of 99% is meaning that high school kids who are growing up in rough neighborhoods, who are pretending to be gangsters, beef with their high school classmates, they start chatting shit in the parking lot and somebody pulls a gun and blasts one of their neighbors, okay? For me, that's not a law-abiding gun issue. That's not even like a mass shooting issue. That's like a gang violence issue where we have this entire subculture of drug dealing, burglarizing tribal groups that recruit teenagers in order to commit violence. And because these teenagers want to be badass within those groups, they think that committing homicide on school grounds is a reasonable way to show off their machismo. So I would socially categorize that completely differently than mass shootings. Keys, has Connor watched Destiny Court videos? I haven't, and I don't think I'll care. I think I would just wait for the court stuff to get resolved. Yeah, we're having a good stream. Sin Patty says, less than 50 likes, 150 people here. True. Like the stream. Like the stream, it's free. LB says, settle, colonize there. I fixed it for you. Okay. I don't care. Don't care. Don't care.
Let's rewind the clock a week ago. Israel bombed Iran first.
I mean,
Is that just all right, everyone.
Okay, you're both, sorry. People correct me in chat when I know they're fucking wrong. Gray Jedi says Zimbabwe was there long before the time you are noting. I'll go ahead and Google that shit momentarily. I almost guarantee you're wrong because I'm pretty sure the state of Rhodesia was renamed to Zimbabwe once it fell. And then DD22E says, no, those guys were English, not Dutch. You're thinking of the Republic of Orange and the Republic of Transvaal. Those are the Boer Republica. Okay. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm saying, DD22E, where basically the Dutch were the people who settled that territory first and then the English came later? Or are you actually mean? I think you're actually me right now. More? Okay, sorry. I have to hand my wife 3 days worth of Diet Cokes. All right. Love you.
There's a fire somewhere. We all need to leave.
LB says you're not a rebel on your own homeland from European colonizers. You're a rebel if the government that rules the territory is the current government in power. You're still a rebel. I think you're just using words how you want to, LB.
Okay, stream snipers. The
Calling them rebels is crazy. Are y'all crazy? Let's look at the word rebel. Sorry, we're obviously chat's 20 minutes behind, so I'm catching up with white South African discourse. Rebel definition: a person who rises in opposition or armed resistance against an established government or ruler. I used it correctly. You guys are all in your feelings.
okay, the conflict is not as simple as like who hit who first. I think that you have to look at more. I think you have to be a little bit more comprehensive when you look at the region. So, for instance, do you agree that Hezbollah, like, has been at war with Israel, and the Houthis have been like shooting bombs at Israel, and that Hamas has been at war with Israel, and all of these proxies are funded by and supported by Iran, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
LB says 50 people murdered over 10 years isn't a genocide. It's Nazi bullshit. It's 50 people per year.
Yes. Yep.
So if Iran has been funding these things, and then let's say, I'm simplifying this up, but let's say Iran has been funding proxies against Israel, and then Israel shoots a bomb at Iran. Is it fair to say, even if it might be strictly true, that Israel attacked Iran first? Does that really fully encompass everything that's happened?
Again, I'm very new at politics. I cracked a Red Bull and just study this stuff, stayed up all night studying it. From what I've read, though, is that you have to look at the entire Middle East as a whole. Iran is one of the only superpowers of the Middle East. If they fall, do you think Israel would continue expanding and try to conquer more land? Or do you think that they'll just
what would Israel
stop
conquer?
exactly where they are and they won't go any further?
I think they'll stop where they are. Like, what else would they expand to?
They would.
I think eventually, if they keep up the current rate of settlement, I think it's entirely possible that Israel would settle Gaza and the West Bank, particularly if they don't seem like they're looking for peace with the indigenous populations there. I think that's entirely possible. But after that, I don't think Jordan would tolerate them expanding east of the River Jordan. I don't think Lebanon or any Arab allies would support them, spreading into Syria or Lebanon. I don't think the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia would tolerate them expanding into Saudi Arabia or Egypt the same. So I think that I think Israel is going to grow maximally by occupying the West Bank and Gaza. Fashion 40 says, ask Counterpoints, do you feel that Trump's approach to South Africa was done in good faith? No. I think that Elon Musk made it a pet issue, and Trump was trying to do his boy a favor because his boy spent $44 billion on a social media platform in order to put his finger on the scales to help Trump win.
Expand throughout the whole Middle East.
Where would the next place they would go be?
So from your worldview, you think Israel is only taking a complete defensive position, no offense position whatsoever in the Middle East?
Offense position is a lot different than we'll conquer territory. I don't think Israel is looking to expand anymore.
But they have expanded. You just said anymore, so they have expanded before. Why would they expand before if they're only taking a defensive position?
They expanded before because they got attacked by every country surrounding them, and they took territory in order to secure up their defensive posture, right?
One component in this equation is Israel's population has been increasing since its founding, correct?
Sure.
So that being said, they do have to expand, or else they will just...
There's plenty of space in Israel right now for the people that live there. It's not like they're running out of space.
So you think...
Yeah, there's actually a vast desert in the southeast. Okay, you guys are pissing me off. LB, stop spreading Nazi propaganda, Connor. Lauren Southern is an absolute white supremacist. What Nazi propaganda have I spread, LB? If there are 50 people per year and there's 4 million people who are white in South Africa, I've already said that's not a genocide. And the thing that pisses me off, again, I love you, but fuck you. The thing that pisses me off about your line of thinking is I can't talk, according to you, I can't talk about the fact that people got their homes invaded and they were tortured to death within their own homes. I'm going to talk about that. I don't give a shit if it's inconvenient for black justice. I don't give a shit if it's inconvenient for social justice in South Africa. If you break into somebody's house and you torture them to fucking death, then fuck you. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if your broader movement is justified. That's obviously not justified to torture teenagers and children to death. So because it's statistically rare, we're obviously going to say that it's not, that it's not a genocide, but you can still talk about the evil individuals who use race racial grievances as excuses to torture and murder their neighbors. So don't fucking, number one, don't tell me not to talk about shit. I will, if you tell me not to talk about shit, I'll fucking quintuple the time that I talk about shit. So don't tell me not to talk about things. Number two, don't say that talking about the dynamics of some documented murders in South Africa is racist talking points. If it's factually true, it's factually true. Torture, murders of farmers in South Africa. Yeah. So already, AI summary, we can go ahead and go into the things if you want. In South Africa, farm attacks, including tortures and murders, are a serious concern, particularly for those in the agricultural community. These attacks often involve extreme violence, leading to significant concern. Reports indicate that farm attacks occur regularly in South Africa. There's debate surrounding the extent of the problem and whether these crimes are racially motivated. Different accounts of murder numbers exist between various sources. Official police stats on farm attacks and murders have been considered less reliable since 2007, leading to organizing and compiling of their own stats. Victims who survive farm attacks and their families experience significant physical and emotional trauma. There have been calls by the South African government to prioritize tackling these issues. I almost guarantee you that even if I check this out and it says, oh, it's not as big of a deal as like people are portraying, I guarantee you that there is going to be at least, 2 or 3 stories of families who effectively watched each other get like tortured to death in front of the other people. So yeah, here's an entire piece of paper. So I'll go ahead and link it for you. How about that? Here's an entire academic paper on torturous violence in relation to home invasions in South Africa. So how about you go ahead and read this Nazi propaganda for us? Yeah. Here we go. You want to read some? Edward and Ina de Villiers. Mr. and Mrs. de Villiers were overpowered in their bedroom by 3 armed men at approximately 2:30 on a Thursday morning. The men demanded money and the keys to the safe. The attackers tied up the couple and poured boiling water over them in an attempt to gain information regarding the location of the keys. Mr. de Villiers was then taken outside of a room where she was burned with a hot clothes iron on her chest for the same reason. After failing to find the keys, they broke the safe out of the wall to which it was fastened and fled the scene with the couple's vehicle. Okay, so just burning people with boiling water and hot irons. Mrs. Christine Otto was walking to her car on her way to a funeral when she was ambushed. At 9 o'clock, 3 males dragged her inside her home and tied her to the shower. Her home was plundered as the attackers searched for the keys to the safe. The attackers took the bag which contained her late husband's ashes and strewed it over her bed, saying that they knew he was dead and she was alone. Awesome. So emotional torture. Mrs. Jackson was confronted and overpowered by a group of 3 men in her home at approximately midnight. Her hands were tied with rubber bands. The attackers demanded money and were extremely agitated when she revealed that she only had 40 whatever. She was then stabbed with knives and tortured with a hot clothes iron on her back. Even though the lights on the room were kept off to protect the attackers' own identities and they shone a flashlight directly into her eyes, Mrs. Jackson managed to turn on the light, which set the alarm off. This upset the attackers even more. Andre van der Meer. Mr. van der Meer went outside at 10 p.m. to inspect a noise when he was held at gunpoint by 3 men. He was shot in the chest, the back, and the head. His house was then ransacked and the loot, food, money, and a cell phone, loaded onto his light delivery vehicle. Mr. van der Meer, still alive, was then tied to his own vehicle with wire around his feet and dragged for approximately 1.5 kilometers until the vehicle overturned. 2 attackers managed to flee the scene. So do you want me to keep going? Because, here's somebody who was tied to a shower and then their husband's ashes were poured all over the house, making fun of her for her dead husband. Here's somebody that's burned with a clothes iron and boiling water. Here's someone that was also stabbed and burned with a clothes iron in order to get information. And here's someone who was like dragged for 1.5 kilometers behind their own vehicle in order to torture them. None of these actions are, you can argue that like the torture is necessary in order to get access to the safe so they're not racially motivated, but you can't tell me that these aren't horrific crimes deserving of being highlighted and extremely punished. So LB, Wake the fuck up.
I think 100 years from now, they will never expand. They will have no interest in creating more territory, even though.
And by the way, that took me 30 seconds to find. I had no idea if that document would contradict my worldview, and I was still confident enough to go find it in 30 seconds.
They have taken more territory in the past.
Well, what did they take territory for? What was the impetus for that?
To just expand. I
believe they were in war with other countries that were fighting with them. And in exchange for peace, they gave some of that land back, right? Israel had conquered the whole Sinai Peninsula. They gave it back to Egypt in exchange for a peace treaty.
All right, let's talk about the peace treaty. You're talking about the Camp David Accords, correct?
I think so, yeah, in 78.
Okay, why do you think they took that peace treaty?
Because Egypt agreed not to attack them anymore.
That's it? That's the only reason why you think?
What else are we? I mean, they want peace, but they don't want to be at war with every single surrounding
country. For everyone
country.
who doesn't know here, the Camp David Accords, one of the biggest things about it is that Israel, post the Camp David Accords, they received the largest amount of funding and foreign aid from the U.S. post the Camp David Accords. The second one, you want to take a guess of which country took the...
He's acting like he has this like big own and he doesn't have shit.
Second largest amount?
Egypt?
It was Egypt. Yeah, exactly.
That's good.
Okay, so paying $5 billion a year, which is the equivalent of $18 per U.S. citizen in order to have peace in the Middle East in a region where 2/3 of the world's petroleum is obviously good policy. This guy's a R-slur.
Isn't it? They were two countries that were fighting a lot, and now they don't fight anymore, and they haven't for 50 years. Isn't that a good thing?
So you think just paying off opponents of the United
States,
that's what prevents war?
Sometimes. It's called diplomacy, dumbass.
No.
I mean, if they stop fighting, isn't that a good thing? Well, I mean, what is the...
It's not a good thing because we're talking about a people who... So I know a lot of people in here, they don't believe in the Bible. They don't believe in Jesus. They're not biblical. But we're talking about a conflict where these people inherently do. It's in their DNA. They teach their kids about it. They teach their grandkids about it.
The Bible and Jesus.
So, let me just pay them off with money and then they'll stop fighting.
I mean, they literally stopped fighting for the past, 50 years? So yeah, that's how it works.
How long are we supposed to support foreign wars, foreign territories?
And if it costs us $18 per taxpayer and it stabilizes international trade and commerce, we could pay that in perpetuity because the money that we make off of international commerce is 1,000x whatever we're paying Egypt and Israel.
How long are we supposed to, how much money do we have to give them? The truth is you can't give them ever enough money. That's the truth. It will always keep going on. So we have the choice in the United States either to pull out of the Middle East, completely cut ties with Israel, or continue fighting endless wars to the end of time. If you're
as long as they have 2/3 of the world's energy reserves, we're going to fight wars in the Middle East and North Africa. I hate to break it to you.
Trump supporter, and you're upset that the fact that he completely took advantage of the MAGA movement and lied to everybody and wasn't anti-war, then this should matter to you.
This guy started cooking yesterday, which is why his meal tastes like shit.
Okay, so let's run that down. Let's say we do that. Okay, let's say that we completely pull out of the Middle East. We have no interest there whatsoever. Saudi Arabia and Israel look to the U.S. and they say, okay, they don't want to be involved anymore, and instead they decide to become bedfellows with Russia and China. Let's say that we come to our next OPEC, oil price manipulation period or whatever, and you start to see oil prices rise, or it's just rising for the United States, or Russia, China, Middle Eastern countries, everybody that kind of controls access to the Suez is going to start cutting off U.S. shipping. What does the U.S. do at that point?
Okay, so that's different completely.
Wait.
Oh, no, it's not at all. As a matter of fact, this is almost explicitly why U.S. foreign policy is the way that it is.
Whoa.
I'll explain why.
I'll explain why.
Russia cut ties with Iran.
Well, bullshit. They said that they weren't going to come to their military defense. That does not mean that they cut ties with Iran. This dude, again, Wiki Warrior, started reading yesterday.
No, hold on.
You're saying
ties were cut with Iran temporarily, not because of
Ukraine.
Ukraine.
The Middle East. That's not true.
Wait, hold on. Right now, I think Russia has other problems going on, which is why they're not helping Iran. But Iran,
militarily, they still have a good relationship.
And Russia, Iran was producing drones for Russia for a while for the Ukraine.
These are countries. They're not friends. Okay, when they say they're not allies anymore, they're not allies. They don't.
Bullshit. This guy is R-slurred as hell. I'm actually going to check in with chat because, no offense, LB pissed me off. So I want to check in with chat and continue to read chat. NG Comrade says, off topic, but would you review combat footage from Ukraine? Lots of Ukrainian units post their stuff. Yes, I would, NG. As a matter of fact, we're going to start something called Valor Reacts. Matter of fact, since we have so many people, if you've enjoyed the stream so far, I mean, we've been bouncing between like 150 and 170 all day. So I have to assume you guys enjoy the stream a little bit. Type in Valor Media Network, VALOR, media common spelling, NETWORK, into your search bar. I am live on the Counterpoints channel on Tuesdays from 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. But I am live on the Valor Media Network Monday through Friday. So every day besides Tuesday, I'm live there. So if you want to have similar content where we review and break down debates of the day, then meet me there, okay? And yes, I would do that style of content, but we're going to do that on a channel called Valor Reacts, where we're going to break down movies and also probably combat footage. We're working on it in the background. David Monroe says, there is a ton of near misses on your comments in South Africa. You really should spend some time looking at the broader context of the country. Crime rates across the country are wild. Yeah, if their homicide rate is 42 per 100,000, then obviously blacks are killing blacks at a higher rate. But if that's comparable to African Americans within the United States, how is that substantively different than what we deal with here with higher crime rates within the African American community / African community in South Africa? Like what broader point have I missed? What misstatement have I made? Right? It's not a genocide. More people have been killed in LA County. Sure. Did I say different? I think you guys are acting like you're reacting emotionally to me saying that torture and murder of whites that are race-based in South Africa is bad. And you're like, oh, you're saying there's a genocide. And it's like, no, I'm saying explicitly there isn't a genocide, but that race-based torturous murder is still bad. That should actually be like an easy concession. And no offense, but every time like a liberal or a progressive is like, well, you have to understand the context of the race-based torture and murder. It's like, fuck you, you know? Bum number one says, I think only a very small minority actually believe there's an actual genocide. Yeah. True Zealot says, think Steve is scared. He saw a ginger with a receding hairline and an Amish beard and chose to do anything rather than engage. LB says, I find it fascinating how people cry when their chickens come home to roost and you live on stolen land. LB, this is why I think it's so funny whenever the progressives and libs are like, one of us, gooba gaba. And they're saying that to me because I could not disagree with you more. Okay? Europeans came to the American continent, and through contact in the Labrador Peninsula by future Canadians, they spread disease unintentionally. There was like cholera and malaria and all that bullshit coming from Eurasia and Africa, and it wiped out 90% of the indigenous population before we even had contact with the rest of the indigenous population. And so when Northern Europeans arrived in the Americas, of course they encountered indigenous, but the indigenous were already 90% wiped out. And there was vast swaths of the country that were not colonized, settled, developed, industrial. So as a result, you can appeal to morality and just say, well, it's the indigenous people's lands, but nobody was thinking that way 300 years ago or 400 years ago. And so, of course, the Europeans came to the American continent that was already depopulated by 90%. And even if the indigenous population was 10x, it still would not have been enough in order to resist the European colonization efforts. And then the Europeans conquered and colonized the territory. Like, what's the modern population? What's the modern population of North American indigenous people? Modern population of North American Indians is 7 million people. There's 10 million people. We are 33 times that number, and this population lives in one of our biggest cities. This population lives in, goes to work in Manhattan every day. There was no scenario in which 10 million people were going to remain uncolonized 300 or 400 years ago. 0% chance. So it's a fact of history, and I'm not going to, freak out and whip my back for the colonization of the past 400 years. What are you going to achieve? Like, oh, yes, Black South Africans, you can murder me for the sins of my ancestors. Like, no one will ever think like that. You are hurting yourself. You are hurting your own politics. Gray Jedi says, this is what I'm saying. I've looked into South Africa as was in the last 100 years or so, and it's much worse than the same people think. People got killed for having mixed kids. Okay, South Africa is evil. Does that mean that you get to torture and murder whites now? Andrej Jelsik says, everything changed because Zuma colluded with warlords from neighboring countries to molest and destroy South Africa regardless of color. Even AIDS and the rise in crime is because he opened the borders. Okay. Shadow 2 Bravo says, good morning. Good morning to you, King. LB says, the president controls the executive branch. The buck stops with him. My statement stands. All right. Sacred Snow says, I agree that we need to update our thinking on the virus based in retrospection. That part of building these predictive models, however, if we get to the same scenario of, okay, it's contagious, how deadly is it? Get contagious Ebola and we say, oh, well, Florida had good outcomes last time. Yes, you're right, Sacred Snow. We should not apply COVID tier thinking to future pandemics, especially if the fatalities are higher. 100%. Effectively, like, what we would need to do is we would need to identify key industries that need to continue operating, and we would need to prioritize like food. Like, we have to make food regardless of what happens in the rest of the world. We have to make food for our population. So we would need comfortable MOP gear, which is mission oriented protective posture gear. Let me go ahead and show it to you. We would need effectively like ventilated and air conditioned MOP gear for agricultural workers to keep working even during an Ebola pandemic. So basically imagine working with cows, chickens, and pigs while you're dressed like this. It would fucking suck. But if we invested in it, then we could easily survive an Ebola-style pandemic. So, you justify a lot of war crimes if you want to target anyone living on stolen land? True. True. It's not stolen land. South Africa had barely anyone living there. Well, we conquered the fuck out of it anyway, so it doesn't matter. David Monroe says, the representation of the trouble of South Africa wildly misses context. Then add the context. You can say South Africans bad. That doesn't justify murdering and torturing white South Africans. There's nothing you can say that the white South African government did 40 or 50 years ago that will justify current torturous murders. What the fuck are you talking about? If I show you, let's say it's World War II and there's German civilians, can you say, oh, well, it makes sense that the Soviets raped and murdered German civilians. Look at how bad the Nazis were. What the fuck are you talking about? Why would you ever justify that? Why wouldn't you just say the Nazis are fucked up, but that doesn't justify raping and murdering German civilians? What the fuck? Like the fact that you guys are like this actually pisses me off a little bit. You should be smarter than this in my chat. That actually makes me mad. Bud123 says, I did leg day yesterday. I got my squat up to 135. Based. Time for chest and triceps today. Based. Keep lifting weights. Gen X's Connor's the best. Will be too big eventually for him to engage, but for now we're chatting it up. True. No. Parasocial, love you guys. I'm still going to be talking about white South African genocide while we're moving on to the geopolitics of Israel and Iran. I will be cringe on stream in order to engage with my chat. But anyways, I need to go use the restroom. I'll be right back, but I'm going to let this dude who learned about geopolitics yesterday entertain you. I will never forget you, Audacity. Don't worry about it. Scrolling. Let's go.
They don't support each
Be
other.
right back.
So like if you're saying it goes larger than Iran and Israel, it doesn't. It might not.
So
it might not.
So if we were to pull out of the Middle East completely, what do you think happens following that?
Not pull out of the Middle East completely, cut ties with Israel. Don't support them anymore.
Well, we would have to cut ties, I imagine, with like Saudi Arabia and Egypt and everybody else,
we
too,
still
right?
have our bases there, so it is what it is.
So we would have bases in countries that we say we no longer want to have a positive relationship with, and they would be cool with the bases being there? You don't see like another...
That's what's happening in
Benghazi
Iraq
or
right now.
something?
We have bases in Iraq, correct?
Yeah, we do, but I mean... We also ostensibly have like a decent relationship with this country too, as well, right? We sent them a whole bunch of money. We funded
after the regime change. I don't support the regime change.
No, but I'm asking you. Well, because we need to follow through with this, okay? Let's say we pull out of the Middle East, or why do you think they would allow us to keep military bases there if we're no longer going to help any of them or be friendly with any of them?
Maybe we don't need them. Maybe we can just spend the money.
Then let's say that we dump all the military bases there. if something comes up where they decide, well, we'd actually want to increase the cost of gas going to the USA, or we want to, we don't want to ship things through the Suez to the US anymore. Like, what do we do at that point?
Where do we get most of our oil from?
Right now, probably between us refining our own in Canada.
Okay, in the Middle East, where do we get the most oil?
The largest exporter individually, I don't know, my guess is Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure.
Saudi Arabia. Is Saudi Arabia involved in Israel conflict whatsoever?
Yes.
Are they? How?
The Saudi Arabia is incredible. There's a reason why the most thing that came out of Saudi Arabia recently was a meanly worded letter saying, we hope that you guys are careful when you bomb Iran's nuclear enrichment plants. Iran attacked Saudi Arabia.
The Abraham Accords created normalization in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest countries.
They didn't. So Saudi Arabia didn't technically join the Abraham Accords, although there might have been a path there. But the Abraham Accords is about peace with Israel, not the United States, right?
No, that's between Israel and the surrounding Middle East. The Abraham Accords
and some other countries, yeah,
including Saudi Arabia.
Well, Saudi Arabia wasn't a formal signatory to the Abraham Accords, but they were probably on their way to normalization.
Do you think they're any threat to Israel whatsoever, the Saudi Arabia? Do you think they genuinely care? Do you think they even have the power to stop Israel with their military force versus Israel's military force?
No, I don't think so. But I'm not worried about Israel. I'm thinking about the United States.
So your hypothetical doesn't mean anything.
No, my hypothetical is what happens if all of these countries decide they don't want to do business with the U.S. anymore?
Destiny. We don't need Israel. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this.
What about OPEC?
We don't need it. We don't need it.
What about OPEC?
We don't need to go to war, guys. We don't need Israel. We don't need to have a regime change in Iran. Israel has a nuclear bomb. Iran can too. It's okay.
Okay, so if that whole region was unfriendly or hostile towards the United States, you think that life would go on as normal and that wouldn't impact anything whatsoever for us?
No, it would 100%. Trade wars and whatnot. But like that's. Listen, the Earth keeps turning. Am I wrong? Like,
okay. Final words. Okay, go. Give us our final words. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? What he just asked?
What did he say? Something about? No, is Nick Fuentes here? I don't think he is allowed to go to the Bronx. Is he?
No. He's not. No, he's not. No, he's not. Hey, I came here to learn something. I'm very new at politics, and I think I did. Thank you very much, Destiny. I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Good luck. Good luck in the future.
Jesus, I'm fucking dying in jeans. That guy was wearing a whole ass suit.
Yeah?
Jeez,
oh, yeah, it's hot. Okay.
Yeah.
What's up? How you doing? I just understood what you said. Sorry. Okay. Go for it. What's up?
I hate Donald Trump, first and foremost.
You hate Donald Trump?
I hate Donald Trump.
Well, why are you up here debating me?
I'm going to fight you a little bit on labeling him a fascist.
You don't like labeling him a fascist?
I don't think I like labeling him a fascist.
Okay.
I think there's a specific political and historical meaning to fascism that I don't think Donald Trump fits. I think that...
My
Thank you
favorite
very much.
topic. All right. Checking in with chat because while I handled my business, you guys were chilling in here. Sunglasses indoors is a red flag. True. Good hat, though. True. I'll laugh my ass off, said Sacred Snow. True. Fung Dark says Vance on Rogan was pretty cool seeing him be relatable and extremely sane washed. Ooh. Adding that to the docket for sure. I feel like that didn't get that big of a splash, even though I think it was a few days ago. We got a pretty full docket here. Nice. Maybe he's blind, you ableist dick, says Audacity, and I agree. All right, I'm gonna... You're talking about me because I was making fun of his sunglasses. Well, on screen right now, we realize that's not true. I'm going to allow the content to play because fascism is my favorite topic, and then I'll pause and read some chats.
Destiny, I appreciate your time.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Good luck. Good luck in the future.
Yeah, tall fascist chat.
Jesus, I'm fucking dying in jeans. That guy was wearing a whole ass suit.
Tall fascist Chad. Tall fascist Chad. Tall fascist Chad. Let's go.
Yeah.
Jeez,
Oh yeah, it's hot. Okay.
Yeah.
What's up? How you doing? I just understood what you said. Sorry. Okay. Go for it. What's up?
I hate Donald Trump first and foremost.
Damn it. I thought he was going to be a fascist. Sad. Kay gave us a $14 super sticker, but for some reason on StreamYard, I can't see the super sticker. So thank you, Kay. Much appreciated.
Donald Trump?
I hate Donald Trump.
Why are you up here debating me?
I'm going to fight you a little bit on labeling him a fascist.
You don't like
Ooh. Audacity became a member. Thank you, King.
labeling him a fascist?
I don't think I like labeling him a fascist.
Okay.
I think there's a specific political and historical meaning to fascism that I don't think Donald Trump fits. I think that when I think about fascism, I think that it's nationalism as an overriding principle to fuel their authoritarianism. I think that Donald Trump's authoritarianism and ultranationalism, which he does have, I don't think those are working. I don't think one is causing the other. I think they're working tangentially together.
Yeah, he has a weird eye twitch, but I'm just gonna say it. This is a good looking dude. I agree with him that Trump is too stupid to be an ideological fascist. I think if somebody started talking to him about Giovanni Gentile, he'd be like, "Oh, I'm so bored. Please fast forward." Like he wouldn't want to sit down and learn about political corporatism. He wouldn't want to sit down and learn about flexible authoritarianism. He functions naturally in that way. Okay, that's the he's not a fascist. He's not somebody who understands the ideology. Shadow 2 Bravo says, I'm driving all day, so I'll be listening and not chatting. Have a great stream. Hashtag Team Connor's dad. Thank you, Shadow 2 Bravo, for the donation. Much appreciated.
So you don't think the guy whose slogan is "Make America Great Again" that he's using to unilaterally use the executive for whatever policy he wants isn't using nationalism to be an authoritarian?
No, I think the intentionality is important when we talk about nationalism or fascism. I think it's I don't think that he cares about like the nation state. I don't really even think he cares about America that much.
True. I think he thinks he cares about America, but I think he's self-deluding.
I think
not to short circuit this argument, but depending on how deep in the weeds we get, I would actually probably agree with you.
Yeah.
I think he's incredibly narcissistic. Just from the brief summary or reading I had of other fascist figures, like I don't think Hitler was just out for himself. I think he did have some vision of like whatever.
Like post World War
I don't think Donald
with the
Trump,
Treaty of Versailles, right? Like he wanted to.
Sure, yeah, I don't think Donald Trump has a vision for America at all that isn't just like self-service.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm getting at is that his underlying motivation and overriding principle for anything is ultimately his own ego.
Sure. I don't think I would necessarily disagree with that, yeah.
Yeah. So I think it ascribes more political or intelligent or ideological malice than Donald Trump is actually capable of when we call him a fascist.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that either. I don't think
But I think there are people who genuinely believe in political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism who are in the Trump government, okay? Larry Hutchinson for $5. Thank you, King. You are too kind to the chat. Thanks for being a trucker's best friend. Your content is super dope when I have to drive 4 to 5 hours straight. Well, thanks, man. I'm happy that I can help you out. I have the easier job of the two of us. I get to hang out here and chat shit about politics. You get to, drive cross country and hopefully never get into a car accident. And I hope you're making great money while you're doing so, by the way. Commercial trucking is one of the last like blue collar jobs that I know of that makes a decent living. What I mean by that is obviously you can be a drywaller. Obviously you can be a plumber, electrician, HVAC, but you have to get so many certs in order to get it. Where it seems like even though you have to get a truck driving cert and truck driving is incredibly hard, it still feels accessible. Maybe that's an incorrect opinion, but I'm happy I get to entertain you while you do that. Then give me 1 second. So political corporatism. So my frustration is I listened to Keith Woods describe Giovanni Gentile, and I feel like this is incorrect, okay? That most people have an incorrect definition of political corporatism. Political corporatism, also known as corporate statism, is a political system where interest groups, corporations play a central role in policymaking, often with state sanction. It differs from other systems by integrating these groups directly into governing structure, granting them significant influence over state affairs. This is not the way that I use it, okay? This is not the way that I use it, and I think 90% of people use it this way. What I mean by corporatism, which can align by fascism, human body. Okay, so what I mean by corporatism is I mean that fascists think of the nation state as a body, okay? The digestive system are the raw minerals and imports of the nation that then get processed by the body. The heart is the economy. The lungs are, I don't know, think of something else, some other import system. The cardiovascular system is the logistics network. The brain is the government. The eyes are the intel operation. The antibodies are the security forces or the skin, so on and so forth. So you analogize a nation state to a whole body. And the argument from fascists is that within syncretic societies, and what I mean by that is they have multiple different kinds of people, is there are people who do not act to further the corporative body. They would analogize Jews, ethnic minorities, religious minorities. They would analogize them to parasites or viruses who are here trying to infect the corporative body for their own benefit. And that's the way they analogize it that allows them to do ethno-religious purges and mass slaughter of their political opponents. Now, flexible authoritarianism, I actually believe in political corporatism to a degree, but I think the way in which it can be used in order to identify other humans as viruses and parasites and then kill them, I think that's fucking evil, right? So I believe in political corporatism to a degree. And I think that an ideal society would work harmoniously in the same direction. But I'm not willing to have an authoritarian state in order to do that. When it comes to flexible authoritarianism, fascists they don't believe in a republic or a monarchy or a parliament or a king or a this or a that. They don't believe in systems of power in and of themselves. They believe in systems of power as a means for which they can cultivate their own power. And so they have this narrative about how struggle is perpetual. It's like natural to human beings. And what will happen through political struggle is the strongest amongst us will be called to lead. And so a lot of what I just told you is obviously rooted in MAGA rhetoric. We have these enemies, we have these vultures, we have these parasites who are picking away at the corpse of America. And in order for America to be great again, we have to reassert our national destiny, and we have to push out these parasites. And then same thing with the flexible authoritarianism. I don't care what Donald Trump does. I don't care about the Constitution. I don't care about the Supreme Court. I don't care about liberal democracy. I care that we save the United States of America. So that's where that rhetoric is 100% fascistic, even if the people who are practicing political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism, they themselves do not understand the ideology that they are currently possessed by. End of rant.
Usually call him a fascist. If I do, I'm just trying to trigger conservatives. Usually I say he's very selfish. I feel like the last conversation I had on this is I said I don't think he's a fascist because I don't think he's smart enough to be a fascist. I don't even think he has the brain for that kind of stuff.
True, yeah, he's just politically illiterate.
Like we literally have a $5 million
based. We agree.
Immigration card with a golden picture of Trump on it right now, which is absolutely insane to me.
Yeah.
I think that I also think it's important. I say this a lot that when you're analyzing his actions, I literally do just look at it as like a YouTuber with a lot of subscribers. I guess
like a political influencer, right?
Yeah, and I think that explains a lot of his actions.
Yeah,
I think somebody sent me his last truth, and I think he had like Nobel Prize listed 6 times in it. Like he really thinks he's going to get one for bombing Iran or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that analysis.
Okay, well
I love it. Sin Patty says 61 likes is much, much better. Well done, my fellow 3000 IQ girl hottists. Yes, please like the stream. It's free and it helps us out.
Was easy. Shit, I guess.
Thanks for having me.
What do you think about shit? That's kind of all I had.
I'm like the least like
Donald Trump isn't easy to defend.
It's not a hill I die on.
Donald Trump is not.
Bud123 says I took an IQ test when I was tired recently and I got a 135. I have a written IQ test from middle school around here somewhere, and I am diagnosed 132.
Not easy to
I've lost a lot of IQ points since that time, but I used to be very smart.
defend. Okay, you gotta.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I feel bad sometimes for coming into a lot of these debates. I feel like I just saw even Kyla, people made fun of her for not being prepared to go on Tim Pool or whatever, and then now you see that clip making the rounds of Tim talking about how they wouldn't go to war with Iran or it'd be immoral or unethical, and Trump is just 180'd on it completely, and everybody gets new marching orders, and now it's actually super okay and great that Trump bombed Iran, and yeah, I truly do think Trump could do anything, and at least the media figures would defend him. But I do think at some point it's going to hurt the base. Like I think it already has.
Yeah.
I feel like midterms are going to be really good for us, right, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think so.
absolutely. I'll see you on the campaign trail, I guess.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah.
The country's still here.
Yeah. We'll see in a year and a half or year.
We'll be fine. We survived a civil war. We'll survive this shit. All right. So we got through an hour of it. Pangburn events. Big shout out to them. I'm probably going to move into the next segment now. What I would say is scrolling through this. This guy was entertaining, but he has the contrarian Trump thing where he has to steelman the 5D chess analysis of Trump. So that was kind of annoying. I'm happy he's a neocon, though. We probably align on policy, but we don't agree. I felt like I felt like Destiny was being evasive with the South African guy. They could have just got into the South African debate issues, but he kept saying like, well, I think Trump mishandled it, which is true. It is a debate about Trump, so I don't fault Stephen for that. But I do think this guy was obviously actually trying to talk about the issue, and Stephen evaded it for a while until they eventually got into it. Overall, I'm okay with acknowledging that, torturing and murdering people is bad. I know that's a political hot take, especially for some of you guys in chat. Apparently torture and murder is understandable. This guy was a douchebag, and he found out about politics yesterday. So for me, he was kind of a miss, even though aesthetically, he's obviously the person that you would expect to be spicy. And then for Mr. Chad Fascist, my only regret is that I wish he was a fascist and that he went on like a 30-minute rant about political corporatism and flexible authoritarianism articulated by Giovanni Gentile. But he enabled me to do so. So good for him. Now, allegedly, somebody said that there's a chatter with a St. Javelin shirt in here. This person is wearing InfoWars, and I think that he was some of the most memed clips of the evening. And then here we got this chick who I'm unfamiliar with. So maybe we'll do this content later on again. But for now, I'm going to take a break and just let that be a segment. So good times. Parasocial love. Have a beautiful day. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.